it's down for the hush. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I want to welcome everyone to the July 7th, 2023 regular meeting of the City Commission. As we begin our meeting tonight, we'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. Also tonight, as we go through our discussion, deliberations with each other and amongst the public, I ask that we do so with respect, dignity, patience, and charity. Also, I have one other warning. If you hear me give a great yell, I do have a granddaughter delivering a child tonight. She's at the hospital. And if I see a text coming on top of here that, yes, I will stop for a moment and say thank you.
Is that your first grade?
Heavens, no.
Oh, how many grades do you have?
I don't have any grades.
No,
Haven't
it's
even started.
You said your
his
granddaughter
daughter.
is having a child.
I did?
Yes.
Well, I meant to say my child is having a granddaughter.
Okay, got it.
Granddaughter.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. I'm just excited, you know. It's great. So anyway, with that, Mitch, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow?
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Werner?
Here.
Commissioner Stanley?
Here.
Commissioner Colbert?
Here.
Mayor?
Here. Announcements from the interim city. Whoop, back up here. We got a birthday to celebrate.
Cake? Is there cake?
No. Oh, sorry.
There would be if you brought cake.
Commander Leo Lake and Master Chief Bradford Young, please join me up here. In case you don't know it, this month is the 233rd birthday of the Coast Guard. So thank you very much. We're so proud to have you in our community. You just don't know. So I watched that helicopter fly around a little bit around my house today. No, they didn't come to rescue me. No, that's the golf course. They should have recognized you. But anyway, thank you. Have this proclamation declaring August as the Coast Guard Appreciation Month here in Traverse City. Whereas in 1790, the Revenue Cutter Service was established under the jurisdiction of the Treasury Department, which later combined services with the United States Life-Saving Service to form the Coast Guard, and in March 2003, the Coast Guard was transferred to the newly created Department of Homeland Security, where it remains today. And whereas at all times the Coast Guard is an armed force, a regulatory agency, a humanitarian service, a federal law enforcement agency, and a member of the intelligence community, and is responsible for the safety, security, and stewardship of the nation's water. And whereas each year the Coast Guard conducts an average of more than 17,500 search and rescue missions, saving over 3,400 lives and $47 million in property, all while protecting our borders through its drug interdiction efforts, keeping more than $3 billion worth of illegal drugs out of the United States. And whereas the city of Traverse City is proud to continue its support for the men and women of the Coast Guard and for Air Station Traverse City. Founded in 1945, the air station has undergone many changes. Today, the air station has over 115 active duty members and boasts 3 MH-60T, whichever that means, model Jayhawk helicopters that cover thousands of miles of coastline along the Great Lakes. And whereas the men and women of the air station embody a rich tradition of honor, respect, devotion to duty, and dedication to service, by maintaining a constant 24/7 ready status, the members of the Air Station Traverse City remain poised to respond by supporting local law enforcement, other military services, and international, federal, state, and local partners to ensure safety of our community. Whereas the members of the Coast Guard are our friends and neighbors, their families are teachers, leaders in local business, and engaged members of our community. They are coaches for our children, selfless volunteers, and the neighbors we have over for a barbecue. Therefore, be it declared, I, Richard I. Lewis, Mayor of the City of Traverse City, proclaim the month of August as Coast Guard Appreciation Month in the City of Traverse City, and urge my fellow citizens and community to join me in thanking all those serving in the United States Coast Guard and recognizing the significance of their presence in our community. It's that last part that's more important. We're proud to have you as part of our community, gentlemen. Thank you. Last year. This year, you have to do it. Thank you, sir.
Mayor, thank you very much. It's an honor to receive this on behalf of our commanding officer, Commander Andy Shano. He sends his regards. He's at the fair this evening giving a speech. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. Commissioners and public and also our partners in law enforcement and fire, it's such a pleasure to be here. Traverse City is an amazing place. I had never been to the state of Michigan until I got stationed here, and I kept asking to come here for 20 years because everything I hear about it is good, and everything I heard about it was indeed true. So it is an honor to be here. We appreciate all your support, and we thank you so much.
Announcements from the interim city manager, please.
Yes, just one this evening. Last week, we had a bit of a squall come through town and caused some limbs and debris to come down. Our staff did start going through the neighborhoods and trying to see what was out there. We're finishing up that assessment, and I can just say at this point in time, there will be a PSA that will get out this week once we kind of determine if a special service or a special storm cleanup is warranted. We expect to have that determination no later than Wednesday, Thursday at the absolute latest.
Okay.
That's all I have this evening.
Okay. Announcements from the deputy city clerk, please.
Meetings scheduled for this week. Our Traverse City Enlightened Power meeting will take place on Tuesday, August 8th at 5:15 p.m. in the Commission chambers. The Historic Districts Commission will take place on Thursday, August 10th at noon in the committee room. Of course, we're always looking for individuals to step up and serve on boards and commissions. A couple of the boards we're looking for are Local Officer Compensation Commission, Human Rights Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Review, Coast Guard City Commission, Planning Commission, and Parks and Rec. And just a reminder that we do have a weekly e-newsletter, the Bay Brief, so please subscribe.
Okay. With that. Okay, before we get to the consent calendar, we need to add an item to the agenda. This deals with a repair that is very much needed to take place sooner rather than later at the North Union Street Bridge. So it's not the bridge that just got done. This is the one that was done in 1999. So we would like to add that to the agenda. On your desk is the motion that we need, and that is to read that the City Commission Rule 9A be suspended, and further that consideration of an emergency purchase order for North Union Street Bridge emergency repair be added to the agenda under new business. So whoever wants, who said that? Who said that they supported?
I said that.
Yeah, I thought I heard you say it. Mize made the motion,
I support that.
and Mitch has made, supported that motion. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion added. So that'll be the last item under new business.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we'll get to the details of that a little later. You have that on your desk tonight, too. Okay, with that, the consent calendar, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Quick item of note before I start reading. Item number 3 and number 12 are exactly the same. One was a placeholder that didn't get removed. 1, consideration of approving the minutes of July 17th, 2023 and July 24th, 2023 meetings of the City Commission. 2, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process and authorizing an out-of-scope agreement for the replacement of the boiler control controls and burner system at the wastewater treatment plant. 3, consideration of authorizing a right of entry for storage area in connection with the Fish Pass project. 4, consideration of authorizing various documents in connection with the settlement agreement related to the opioids litigation. 5, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for playground equipment at Boone Park, which is a planned purchase to be funded by the Brown Bridge Trust Parks Improvement Fund. 6, consideration of authorizing final payment in the amount of $2,511.74 to Rossetti Schultz Jopik Law Amsbuehler Law
Well, you're about
Firm
as bad as I am.
for its provision of specialized legal services for Michigan Tax Tribunal services due to the final invoice for the past fiscal year being in excess of the $75,000 contract amount. 7, consideration of declaring the 2013 Easy Go utility vehicle and 2016 Polaris Ranger surplus so they may be sold at auction, and consideration of authorizing a purchase order for 2 2023 John Deere Gator utility vehicles for use at Oakwood Cemetery and Hickory Hills Recreation Area. 8, consideration of authorizing a blanket purchase order for water meters for the current fiscal year. 9, consideration of scheduling a public hearing for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 regarding a request from Addiction Treatment Services to provide a residential care and treatment facility at 441 East State Street. 10, consideration of appointing Human Resources Director Christine Bosley as the employer delegate for the 2023 annual meeting of the Municipal Employees Retirement System. 11, consideration of declaring a police department duty weapon surplus so it may be purchased at appraised value and provided to Lieutenant Steve Civic upon his retirement. I already did 12, it was number 3.
Okay. Okay. Is there any commissioner here who would like to have a item removed from the consent calendar? Anyone from the public like to have an item removed from the consent calendar? Yes, Ms. Rogers. Thank you. Okay. That's item
3.
3
3.
Or 12.
or 12.
Or 12, whichever. Okay. With anybody else? Okay. With that, all those in favor of the consent calendar is amended?
We need a
haven't got a
motion.
motion yet. That would help us. Just make a motion, please.
I'll make the motion that we accept the consent calendar as amended.
Support.
And we got motion support. Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay. The item removed from the consent calendar was item, I'll just use 12 because it's right there. Consideration of authorizing a right of entry for storage area in connection with the Fish Pass project.
Okay.
That was
12.
also asked to be removed by Mr. Buckholder in an email.
Well, he's not here at
Yeah.
the meeting, so.
Yeah.
Ms. Rogers, you asked this to be removed?
Ann Rogers, 1236 Peninsula Drive. I did not see a description of it, and in fact, I wasn't even sure it was on there tonight, so I'm looking for more information. You should have received a note from NEMIAC probably 2 years ago with all of the oppositions that we had environmentally. So I guess I'm looking for information and be able to weigh in on it more than what this here.
Okay. All we're doing is granting to the to the Army Corps of Engineers a place to store whenever the project starts, to store material that's for construction storage. And so in order to do that, they also have to have a right of entry and it's only for the preparation and during the construction. And there's no ownership change, there's no permanent ownership change, it's just there for the construction of the Fish Pass if and whenever the courts make their decision. So that's what we're doing tonight.
And this is a parcel of city-owned land that has been used for decades for equipment storage
It is
on
part
a
of
seasonal
the,
basis.
it's part of the cemetery property, but it's also a part that has never been platted. It's not being used, it's not used. It is part of the cemetery property, but it's not part of the cemetery proper that's being used for burials. It has not been platted. So that's kind of where we are. Okay?
I'd like to move that the mayor and city clerk execute the Department of the Army right of entry for construction with such documents subject to approval as to substance by the interim city manager and as to form by the city attorney.
Support.
I did cover all that correctly, did I not?
Yeah, it's a piece of property off of Parsons Road,
Yep.
and it's
Okay.
just to be used for construction laydown area.
Okay, whenever that happens. Okay. All right, we have a motion to support. Is there anyone else that has a concern or question they want to address on this item? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Okay. Okay, we have a public hearing that will take place for the proposed budget amendments, which ended on, for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2023. And we're asking to, after the public hearing, we'll look for approval of that agenda. So, or we'll look for approval of the amendments. So with that, I will open up the public hearing for this. Let me explain, see what the amendments are. I'll just go through them real quick. There's a couple of amendments inside the general fund. Basically, there's a change in the amount of, in the Human Resources Department, which was an increase. There's an increase in the fire department, and there's a decrease in the contingency. Both of them are even out, so there's been no more additional expenditures that then had been budgeted. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that had minor increases in the special revenue funds. They're all in the packet. I don't see anything here that, mainly on the expenditure side, but they all had been planned for. So basically, that's it. So we can go through it in more detail, but they were listed in the packet. And of course, this was on the agenda our last regular meeting to schedule this public hearing. So with that, I'll open the public hearing. Anybody want to speak, please come and give your name and going once, going twice. Public hearing is closed. I'll be glad to entertain a motion, please.
I'll make the motion that the budget amendments as outlined in the June 14th, 2023 communication from the city financial analyst be approved.
Support.
Okay. We have a motion support. Because no one spoke during the public hearing portion of it, I'm assuming no one else wants to speak now. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, motion passes. Next, we have consideration of adopting a resolution to establish a ballot proposal for the, excuse me while this thing goes, at the November 7th, 2020 election, asking for the electric to restore up to 1 mil for the purpose of fire department emergency transportation services and facilities. I'll turn this over to you, sir.
Yes, this evening, the mayor and commission, you're considering whether or not to put a vote to the public to look at imposing a Headley rollback. As you all know, we have a cap at 15 mils that over time, if economic development and other things exceed inflation or the collection, then that millage rolls back so that we collect roughly the same amount plus inflation. That being said, there's been a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of energy put into this discussion this evening. I know the fire department has a presentation to kind of walk through the why. I think there's just a couple things that as the city commission is considering this very important decision tonight is what always goes through my mind on things like this is this the right question at the right time? And I would ask the city commission to consider that. The other thing that I would just note, we do have our HR director here. There are a couple things in the presentation that could use some additional context regarding the mandatory overtime. So if there are questions, Christine is here and can help answer those. But one of the reasons for the big increase that you'll see between, I think it's 21 and 22, is the fire department did have a change in the minimum staffing model that was done through their policy, which increased it from 5 at a minimum to 6. So you've got some of that from there, and the catch-up of filling the three positions that were authorized last budget year. So some of that should change over time, and I'm sure the fire department can talk a little bit more about that. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Chief Teller and his staff to provide a summary.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction there, City Manager Geinzer. Appreciate that. So, can everybody hear me? Okay, all right. I never know about these microphones. Okay, real good. So, right, so we come to tonight after 3.5, almost 4 years of working on this project to present before the commission, as the city manager mentioned, the decision to yes or no put this topic in front of the voters for determination on November 7th. I think I can run this computer with the arrows here. Yes? Okay. I got 13 slides here. It's been in the packet for since last Thursday, Friday. I'll be happy to answer any direct questions. I have my command staff here as well who have different responsibilities in the area of providing this information. Just a history there, back in 2019, and I'm not going to read this word for word, okay, I'll tell you right now. That's not a very pleasurable experience, but in 19 is when this project started, and then in 2020 we hit the ground running on it, and then COVID happened, which really stretched it out. And in 2022 we boiled down the TriData report, which has been brought in front of the commission in the past, and then an ad hoc committee was formed. We had several meetings, and here in 2023 is the question being proposed. Some of the information in here speaks to questions that were asked at the study session last Monday by commission members, and we can provide some information to answer those questions. This was a specific question that was asked of the 9 fire departments in Grand Traverse County, the ones that run their own ALS or paramedic transport services. Who are they and when did they do it? And this explains that. Blair Township was the first in '97, and then followed in later on by Green Lake, Peninsula Township, East Bay, and then the last being Long Lake Township. So they have their own internal ALS transport services to serve their community and each other, as we do right now. However, they are primary. They are hauling them in their own ambulances off the scene to the hospital. So why? Some of the reasons why. An efficient service for those in need. This afternoon, 9 and 10 asked me for an interview, a short interview, and I gave the example of the way we train and the way we structure our department. We have 3 full-time shifts that work 24/7, and we don't move those personnel among the shifts unless there's a retirement or a promotion. We don't bid shifts. We don't mix them up every year like some of the larger institutions do. We find there's a huge benefit in that because our personnel get to know each other, and they can almost run some of these critical medical calls without really giving a lot of direction. I likened it as an example to a NASCAR pit crew. They practice all the time. They practice on how to be quick and safe and efficient, and that's how we are on some of these calls where seconds matter. We stabilize the patient, we move them rapidly to the ambulance, and we're off to the hospital as quick as we can and as safely as we can, because in a lot of instances, seconds count. If it's a severe trauma, it's a cardiac issue, it's a stroke coming on. We don't have time to take our time on the scene. We need to treat that patient and move them as quickly as possible. And again, with the continuity of care, which I explained here last Monday night, it's our people treating and handing off to our own people, and that's seamless. Imagine if you were going for your very first mortgage, and it's a very scary situation. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot on the table. You're trying to get your first house, and there's a lot of questions, a lot of personal information that's transmitted. And then in the middle of that person you've been talking to for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, they leave and another person comes in and asks you the same questions. And that's what happens when we hand off to another agency. That reassessment, save for a few numbers of vital signs and stuff, that reassessment happens again and again. It's a lot of redundancy. Though with the continuity in care, we leave that behind. We are the people that are treating, and we are the people that are transporting. In the packet last week, we illustrated the lower response times because we are in the city. We're not ranging outside the city except in special circumstances when we're called to back up other agencies. But we, our average response time and all the calls that we could research going back to 2019 when we changed our software program, we averaged 3 minutes and 56 seconds to all medical calls within town. I talked about our training last Monday, and the city resident billing, that subject will come up in a later slide, and we can talk about that then. So looking at the need, looking out there in the area, I talked about the housing study and some of the demographics, and there's a lot of numbers in there. But a couple of the takeaways is how busy we are in town, not only with our own citizens, but with also those that visit us and tour our city. Over 50% of the households, it says, 20%, 54. Okay, that was supposed to be senior, 55 years and older, over half. As the population ages, and I don't know if you read the article also in Saturday's Record Eagle about the Michigan population overall and its aging, but those are the folks that we that take up the lion's share of our calls. We're happy to do that. It's not a complaint. It's just looking at the stats and what the service need is. As we get older, there's more slips and trips and falls and different things medically that goes on. And that's a demographic we're looking in that regard. And then regionally, there's some other numbers that also represent the average in town and close to it. We talked about the continuity of care. We talked about the response time, the consistency. We control our own employees. If there's a training issue that comes up, we address that right away. Those are very few and far between. With the approval of this process, hopefully in November, we will run 2 frontline ambulances, and we will have 1 on standby 24/7. If we need to employ it, we will have the staff to get that truck on the road as well. We can also help with our community risk reduction effort with fire safety education and our fire code compliance inspections. We can do more of them. We're not meeting anywhere near the mark of 10% of what needs to be done every year. I think we're around 1 or 2%, and we've been there for a long, long time. So while the focus is the medical benefit, there's also other things that can be a benefit as well and plugged into different areas. And in these next few slides talk about that. Under fire response, that second line, we have 2 suppression shifts at 7, and it's only 1 at 6, not 2 at 6. We only have 3 suppression shifts responding. I talked about temperature, time and temperature, and you heard me talk about that here before in this venue, about with the products that we've had in our homes since the mid-1980s, about how quickly fires occur and how rapidly they develop. It's pretty staggering as compared to even the past 15 years of how fast the fires move now, with even the new construction being more airtight. We have less and less time to effectively assemble a force to get in there and not only rescue but also suppress the fire. With a 9+1 staffing model, which we're proposing, it also helps us answer what we call concurrent calls or calls that happen in quick succession. We get a call, we send a unit. Within a couple of minutes, we get another call on the other side of town, we send a unit. Back in the TriData study, Dr. Cohen pointed out, in 2019, that happened 308 times. That's happening with more frequency now just because we are a busier place. And it takes us longer now a little bit to get to other places because of the increase in traffic volume. Thankfully, we're done with the bridges, but next year we also have the Parkway coming at us. But all the different steps we've taken with traffic calming also affect our response times with emergency vehicles within town. Motor vehicle accidents and other events. Right now, we can handle a major on Division fairly well. We clear both stations to handle a head-on crash on Division Street. If we were to have, with this proposal, if we were to have that accident happen on Division and say something happened at 8th and Munson where we have a lot of motor vehicle accidents, we could also have enough personnel to answer that call as well. And everybody gets treated very quickly and off the scene. Our average response time at the hospital right now is 15 minutes. If we're called out into Garfield Township or East Bay Township or Peninsula or Elmwood, that can take up to an hour because of the travel time and the logistics of taking that person in, but within town, it's pretty close to 15 minutes. Excuse me. And if that ambulance is caught at Munson, maybe there's 4 or 5 ambulances queued up. We can't drop the patient quickly, and we have 2 other units that can pick up the slack and respond if there's another call that comes in. So response benchmarks, these come from NFPA 1710, which is the standard, National Fire Protection Association. It's the standard for determining all of the different time metrics for full-time career departments, of which Traverse City Fire Department is. And in the fine print, it just lays out how many seconds or how many minutes for different parts of an emergency call, respective to a fire, and to what personnel that they recommend are on scene. So just on the right-hand column there, or the right-hand table, excuse me, where it shows single-family dwelling, they're saying we need 16 personnel, and they all have assignments to accomplish on the scene of a single-family dwelling fire. And right now, our minimum staffing was 5. It's 6 now. We're hiring to fill that, but with this 9+1 model, that will give us 9 on the job to hit or attack a single-family dwelling fire. Even with mutual aid, we're getting 2 people on an engine from the Peninsula and 2 people or 3 people on an engine from Metro. We're not quite to that 16, but we're striving in that direction. And with the process that's proposed, with the operational millage and the additional income, we can finance that effort and to help not only make it safer for the firefighters, but also hopefully have more of a positive outcome for the citizens that are experiencing the fire at their structure, at their house. So again, staffing 9+1, 3 firefighter, EMTs or paramedics for each shift, plus an EMS captain to manage the group, the EMS effort, and the daily staffing model will also help reduce overtime, which is occurring due to all these different absence causes, leave time, lost term injuries, and will enable us to consistently send people out of town for training. We have a local fire training center. It's very, very good for what it provides, but some of the more technical things that we're responsible for, we can't get that training here locally. We have to send people to Lansing, typically, and other places downstate. Now I put up these overtime costs, and these are based out of what I pulled off at BSNA, excuse me, our financial management software. It's pretty, I mean, you can read those for yourself, and right in 22 and 23, some of that was due to the fact that we were authorized to hire 3 more to fill the driver's seat on engine 1, so then we could have 3 2-person units run emergent within the city at a given time. And the overtime hours and the mandatory overtime. So if we drop below our minimum, we have to order somebody in. And that's mandatory overtime. That's not uncommon in the fire service. It's not uncommon in any of the emergency services that are out there. It went up in 22, and at 23 it came down a bit, but we also suffered 2 long-term lost time injuries of a person we got back in July. We've got another person out that probably won't get back here till November or December. But that 1 person or 2 people per shift affects that overtime demographic. And so far in July, we've experienced almost a little over 45,000 in overtime. Now, for the lay person, they might say, well, great, the guy, the personnel can work overtime and they can earn extra money. Well, really, not really, because what happens is pretty soon it's like a dog chasing his tail. You got people that are working their 24-hour shifts that expect a day off out of their 2-day break, and they're mandated in for another one. So they're working all these multiple shifts throughout the month, and we have a lot of our personnel are experiencing severe challenges with the daycare, and we don't see them unless it's an evening shift or an evening, because they just don't have any place to, you know, take their children. So it's another one of the challenges that we're hoping to answer. With the 9+1 staffing model, we'll be able to have 2 people off the shift without incurring overtime. Billing for services, coming up to, this is slide 11 of 13. What's been proposed and talked about throughout this project was that because the city residents right now are what I call paying the freight for the fire department, for the personnel and the equipment and operations, that if we transported them from their residence in the city, that we would only accept then what funding is provided by their insurance company. We would not bill them for anything over. And now that's a really good proposal, I feel. However, understanding that nothing is for free, that citizen is already, or those citizens are already paying taxes for the fire department. And we don't feel that they should be, I guess, double billed in essence. You know, they're paying for us to be there, they're paying for our training, our equipment. We'll take them to the hospital, we'll take whatever their insurance company offers for payment. And then non-city residents, we would bill for the full amount, and then also for collections. Now, that sounds a little harsh, however, that's a pretty common practice within our county and other areas where there's a fire-based EMS service. The residents get a break of some design, and then those that are not pay the full rate. And our statistics show that over the past 2.5 to 3 years, we can track it with our new software, that the mix throughout the year is about 60% city residents and 40% visitors or non-city residents that we respond to. Looking at the expenses, this came from the report that the ad hoc committee generated. Total expenses year 1, yep, we're going to be hiring some personnel. We're also going to be purchasing 2 rescue ambulances, of which we have one at downtown right now at Station 1. Their build-out time is 1.5 to 2 years right now. Excuse me, another effect of COVID. But there are lease options and other things that we can research to get this spun up a lot quicker. And the projected revenue is a range, and it could be a little north of 800,000. The 425 figure that is showing there is very, very conservative. That is based on a figure that Dr. Cohen provided in the study, the TRIDATA study, of an estimated 1,750 transports based out of the 2,400 or so medical calls that we experience. Taking that 1,750 and then pulling 40% of that for non-city residents. So 60% of the 1,750 billed at a rate of $498 apiece equals pretty close to $425,000, and that would be insurance pay only for city residents only, and as a starting point. And then there's a range depending on, as we move forward, how we want that billing framework and protocol to look. So that's why there's a range provided there. And the last slide is information provided through the assessor's office. The bottom figure is a taxable value in a city of $128,500 would equal an assessed value cost for the proposal of $10.71 per month. And that came from the assessor. So I'll, if there's any direct questions, I'll do my best. If there's something I can't answer, I've got my captains here to help me out.
I apologize that I could not have been here for the 24th during discussion. If you back up your slide a little bit to the, one more, I think.
One more?
Yeah. One of the recommendations that I think came out of the committee is that the practice of the city resident right now, if this were to be put on the ballot and if the city and if the commission and if the public approves it, that the practice of city residents and there being only billing for the insurance, and that's what we accepted, and for nothing else. While we didn't put it in a report, that is the understanding that we moved, or at least I on one moved forward with, that that's how that practice would continue. We would not continue to go back and start billing the city resident to make up the difference. Again, they are paying taxes. If this happens, it would be an increase in the tax. So, and then it leads to the beginning of the first year budget. I want to make clear that that $1,800,000 would be as if all of a sudden you had to start day one right here, right now, and this is what you have to do. That, you know, you wouldn't be hiring all these folks. It takes 2 years to get a to get an ambulance. If we were to order today, we most likely wouldn't be here, at least what we were told, for 2 years. So part of that $800,000, $1,800,000, about $750,000 that it's right there that deals with buying those ambulances and buying the medical equipment that has to go into those ambulances, and you can do that slowly over the first 2 years, and you know, through a millage. So you're not going to, and you probably won't be able to hire more than how fast you can get it all implemented is another ball game, but it still has to be done. And then after the initial purchase, then what happens is the equipment or the ambulances are treated like all the other vehicles that we have in our stock through the garage fund, in that they pay a depreciation charge on those vehicles, so that 7 years down the road when they've got to be replaced, the money's in place to pay for them, that we don't have to go out for any more increases, but it gets it taken care of. The other problem I have with this projected, that we came out with the $425,000, and I worked with the fire department staff to come up with that number to make sure that's a solid number that we felt comfortable that would take place. I don't know how they've come up with the $800,000, because that was never brought up. That is a fire department number. It's not what came out of the study. So I have no idea what the thought is to go there, but I cannot accept that particular part of it. For me personally, there was another aspect of all this that we dealt with as an ad hoc committee, and they dealt with the fire stations themselves. And my thought had always been, if we don't get the fire station issue resolved and taken care of, where are these folks going to be? Now, everyone can say, well, we'll just make it work. Well, right now it's not working very well. So how's that going to make it any better? And I see nothing here about what we're going to do about the fire stations. And they are in desperate need of some love. And for some reason, it is now being put off for another year to wait till the study gets done. We know we got 2 bad fire stations. Don't know what we're waiting on. But from my perspective, you got to deal. You know, you're putting the cart before the horse if you're not dealing with the fire stations. So I'm concerned about that. But I wasn't here at the last meeting. Maybe that decision was made by this body when I wasn't here. So. Which is something I probably would not have agreed with. So we'll take it from there. I think I tried to explain everything else after. And hearing about $1 million possible at reading in the newspaper, that kind of tweaked my interest too. I don't know where you came up with $1 million, but I'm still struggling with the $800,000. So,
Question I had for Chief or any of the captains, if
Sure.
you all want to input. So we have left this open for a period of years. We've just talked about all the startup costs that would come along with this. If we were to put this on the ballot, if this gets voted to put on the ballot, I mean, in my mind, I was looking at 15 years minimally. By the time you start up, you hire staff, you want there to be a few years of guaranteed income, or not income, guaranteed staffing and time to get the process worked out. But what, coming from your perspective, what were you looking for years?
You know, it's a good question, because, you know, we know what we know, right? And with all due respect to the mayor, that high number in there is a projection. That's what might be possible. That's a projection. So looking at, you know, this project, not only financing the EMS transport effort, but also, as the language reads in the first slide, and what the language read in the packet, and facilities also wraps in the fire station project, whether remodels or they're new builds or whatever. As far as years, I've thought about it. I really hate to come up with a number. I mean, that's not my expertise. You know, would rely heavily on our city engineer. I know that from what I read of fire stations and replacements out there, there's a common number that's shared in the fire service community that fire stations are expected to have a lifespan of 50-plus years. Now, that's not saying I think this should be in place for 50 years. That's not what I'm saying. But, you know, whatever is constructed has to be something, because these buildings get used hard.
Well, the
every
question,
day.
really quick though, and I don't disagree with that, but we've moved the fire department, or the new station question. So this is a question of basically how long would the override millage proposal be levied for? So essentially to fund staffing the EMS services. So since the building's going to be separate, my question would be more for you. This is for the personnel, the operations of EMS.
This is for the transport services.
Right, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
all this is
So-
for.
Right, that's what I'm asking. So for the transport services, before it would come up basically for a renewal, how many years would you be looking at to have that guaranteed, as looking at embarking, potentially going down this road of starting EMS services, hiring personnel, all of the things that come along with that part of it?
Right, that part, what I anticipate is going to take probably, if, you know, we get to approval in November, it's probably going to take us a time frame of 2 to 3 years
To get it
to
started.
fully get that up to speed, hiring 9 personnel, 10 personnel. And if we have some EMTs in the mix, training them up to the paramedic level. Now, how we could shave some time off of that is that right now I have a lot of paramedics that can work on these ambulances, but the big holdup is going to be the ambulances. Now, if some can be leased for a certain amount of money while we have 2 new ones purchased, that's a big time saver. And there are some programs out there that can do that. We've not investigated it all the way down the road because, you know, we have this to address first. I'm not sure how far in history, in the city's history, how far out these types of asks have went, if it's been 10 or 15 years. I would think that, you know, based on what I know about it, which is not a lot, but yeah, 15 years sounds like a manageable type figure, because that would give us enough time to do some long-range planning and some improvements along the way. I believe that once we get on top of this and get this running, we're going to find other efficiencies that we don't even know about yet, because this will be the first time in the city's history that it's really ran its own EMS service.
Thank you.
As a part of history, 2 millages I know that the city residents have approved, which is the Rec Authority. Both of those were 20-year millages.
Okay, 20 years on the
Okay, thank you.
I have 3 very specific questions and then a whole bunch of other stuff. But I know that you are currently short-staffed. Is it 3 unfilled positions currently?
Currently now we have 1.
We're down to 1?
Yes.
Oh, great. The other
Yep.
2 people have come? When have they started?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Coburn.
What, did that just happen?
They both started very recently.
Right. We had a person start in July, and we had a person start early August.
Excellent, good.
And we're bringing a person on mid-September.
Okay. And the termination of the airport contract should help with staffing, is that right?
Right. That will help us. We should see a decrease in overtime because of the ability to have then a person off without having to call somebody in. That's where that margin improves. That's going to take place August 16th at 3 p.m.
So the numbers that we're seeing on overtime hopefully will change for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
good. Okay. And how do taxpayers currently pay for the emergency services? Is that a line item on our taxes?
No, that's part of your general fund,
Yes,
and then
ma'am.
you've got the PA 345, which pays for the pensions of the police and fire.
Okay, great. I am really struggling with this, and that's unusual for me. I stand with firefighters and certainly with Chief Tuller all the time, but like the mayor, I feel like this is muddled. The problem we're trying to solve, last time we talked about, are we trying to solve health outcomes. And I'm happy to see that on these slides, that's not really what we're selling. We're selling efficiency and a modern look at how emergency services should be delivered. I completely agree with that. And today in Google searches, I saw that colleges and junior colleges are training people as fire and EMS in a single unit now. That is the future. And I think it's the future for us. I don't think it's fair to go to taxpayers, however, with just this piece of let us buy these ambulances and get these people without knowing where they're going to be housed. I mean, I feel like if we put this out there and they vote yes, then they have to vote yes on the millage for the buildings, because otherwise what are we going to do with all this stuff? It seems more honest to me to package them as one and say, here is emergency services for Traverse City in the 21st century. This is where we are going, and this is what we want. And I don't feel that this little piecemeal thing is going to do that. I think that the real problems right now are that we're understaffed, and I'm really sympathetic to the firefighters more than you could possibly know as someone who was a teacher. And I have a hard time not supporting that problem. But I don't think that this approach to fixing that problem is the right one. I'd really like to see a bigger approach, which is, this is where we're headed. Let's be excited about this, and let's do it all at once, rather than, here, we're going to hire these 10 people, which, by the way, aren't there. I'm nervous that we got a letter from the past president of Munson. I also had someone talk to the current president. They are really questioning where we're going to find the personnel, that they're not out there. And so, we undercut MMR. We struggle very hard to find those people. I'm curious why doctors and medical professionals haven't weighed in and said, please do this. This will help our health outcomes. I'm not seeing that. I'm really befuddled right at the moment.
Yes, Tim.
Yeah, nothing new from me, but maybe just the words. I did talk to several physicians after the last meeting, and what they kept asking me was about patient outcomes. So to them, it's all about patient outcomes. And I've not heard anything from the medical community or Munson indicating concern about the current structure. The current structure can be inefficient and frustrating, et cetera, but if it's not detrimental to patient outcomes, the physicians in the community and other medical staff, they're not speaking up saying, hey, something's got to change, patient outcomes. We would be hearing about it if, and so I think it's along the lines of what we just heard, maybe not, but that's what I'm after, is patient outcomes. And the only other comment, and this was not requested of me, but I did talk to somebody who has neighbors that work for MMR, and they asked me just to say that, hey, MMR are also our neighbors, so not to fall in that trap of us and them. That's all. Thanks.
Mayor, if I can.
Yeah,
I guess when I stepped out, there was a question or a conversation that came up about the facilities and how that plays into this millage. Just to be clear, you could not fund the operation and the facility needs with this particular question as it's worded. So that work was done by the ad hoc, and just to make sure all the information is out there, when they did some rough numbers on reconstructing the 2 fire stations to meet the needs of this staffing model, the bond service would be, depending if you went for a 20 to 25 year bond, you'd be between just shy of $900,000 a year up to just shy of $1 million a year. So to the comments that were made earlier, that's something else that you would need to consider.
Well, the report made it quite clear they would be 2 separate issues. They had to be 2 separate villages.
Yep.
And both of them would have to be around 1 mill each. So that was.
So they can't be wrapped into one?
No.
It has to be 2 separate things? Okay.
Well, you could wrap them into one if you want to go up to 2 mills, and you can't do that. But the recommendation from bond council was that you would do a type of millage that was for construction only, And that way, you only levy whatever you need for the bond payment that year. And it's much like we've done other places, so.
And I don't see anybody else's hand up, so I'm going to go again here. So a couple things and points that were just made. First, I guess I'm going to say Munson washed its hands of EMS years ago, years and years and years ago. And so I guess I appreciate the input from past presidents who might have even been in when they washed their hands of it, and physicians, but I've been hearing, I guess that's why we're all up here representing different segments. I hear from a lot of first responders and people that are emergency personnel about the people who are shocked to get their bill when the, fire department came out to them, sat with them basically till MMR pulled up. MMR took them into hospital and got them out, and then they get this huge bill from MMR. That's not to say MMR are bad people, but it's saying that that's a bill that, honestly, that we could have been billing for because we're already there. It's an interesting system that we have going, and that's why I was the one who had requested the information about the neighboring jurisdictions who have switched over to doing their own transport. And as you know, over half of the ones in our area have now changed over, several in the last couple of years, because that is, as Ms. Colbert said, the way that we're going. I will say that I was very surprised last meeting when we sat down and suddenly that the question of having the facilities was pulled from the discussion. That happened outside of the ad hoc. The ad hoc had recommended we go for two separate millages. But I guess I would also go back to the question of, is it the right time? And I look back, the 8 years I've been on this commission, when it first got brought up to commission the Tri-Data study, Mayor Lewis was a commissioner. When the Tri-Data study, was presented, Commissioner Warner and I were on Zoom meetings. This has been going on for a very, very long time. And frankly, we are a representational democracy. So the 7 of us up here pass the budget. The 7 of us pass ordinances. At the end of the day, millages are up to the voters to decide. All we're voting today is to put it on a ballot or not. We have these questions. Other people have these questions. But at the end of the day, it's the citizens' determination of what they want to vote for. And that's where I tend to keep landing. I understand that for some reason we pulled these two things apart. The reality is not only do we need some new fire stations, we need some more facilities in general. So if we can't make that case next year, we're in trouble in a whole lot of ways. But we don't have all that data right now to put it up forward, and that's what I'm hearing is why these were separated. So I understand some of what's being said of why we wouldn't or the numbers, but as somebody who gets a bill, I have a chronic disease called type 1 diabetes. Every time I go to my diabetes doctor, I get a bill from Chicago on behalf of my doctor. I get a bill from Munson that's from Illinois, from Indiana. I get 3 different bills. So I think our doctors and Munson healthcare providers and all of MMR and all of our EMS guys do great jobs. They're all on the front line doing their jobs. But when it comes to the billing and it comes to how it's affecting people at the bottom line, a lot of people aren't involved in that, and they're becoming less and less and less involved. So that's where when I see sometimes emails coming through and saying, well, I don't think you guys should be getting into this, it almost makes me feel the opposite, because maybe we'd get a direct bill from somebody that someone knew who they were. And I'm not saying that I would inherently say vote for this or not vote for this. I know where I'd probably lean looking at the way the trends are going. But at the end of the day, it's up to voters to decide. And I think if this is what our fire department's ready to go forward with, if this is what a study in 2020, a year plus of ad hoc has brought to us, I hesitate to say, no, let's kick the can down the road another year here. At the end of the day, it's going to be up to voters to decide if the fact that there's not a new facility being built yet is enough, or if that they just have dealt with other things and like dealing with our guys and only want to deal with it, and that's enough, and they're ready to vote for it. I trust that the fire department isn't going to put something forward that they can't manage, and I appreciate that they're telling this is about a 2-year lead time. So we delay it another year, we're talking 3 years till we potentially start this or more. So to me, it really does come down to the question of time, whether that was how the interim city manager intended the question or not, but that's to me where I'm at with this discussion right now.
Yeah. Yes, sir, Mr. Treadwell.
Yes, I have spoken previously about some of my reservations. I see that there is a clear trend by some of the surrounding municipalities having gone in the direction of providing their own ambulance service or wrapping it under their fire. I feel it would be, one, better service provided, and two, fundamentally allowing our fire department to do the job of keeping our buildings safe and putting out fires. If we did still have North Flight, or if MMR was a competent ambulance provider for the entire area. But we are moving in a direction where it is increasingly factionalized, which does mean that we have, as Traverse City, have to take a larger role in making sure that our residents have proper service. I am not sure whether this will guarantee that we'll see better service, but we are not making a vote to approve this millage request right now. All that we're doing is putting it before the voters, and it is up to them to decide. I can be glad that based on what we have provided, we do have a fair deal of information. Yes, we don't know the exact health outcomes that we are lacking in, how many people could have saw improved coverage if they had an ambulance that could respond 5-10 minutes sooner. But compared to an item that was on our city election last time about changing the discretionary budgetary authority of the city manager and raising it from one number to another number, I felt that even though I had been regularly attending all city meetings, I didn't know that as well as I could have, and only found out from, say, speaking with Frank afterwards, after that item had gone through, oh, this is what it actually changes in the day-to-day operations of the city. I feel like fire department has been very forthcoming in providing the information about how this would, what it looks like now, what it could look like in the future.
So my fear is that if a person in the city came to me to say, you know, my money's tight, I want to know what problem we're solving with this, I'm not sure what my answer is. Is my answer that the current ambulance system, the MMR system, is inadequate and doing a poor job? I don't have the data that says that that's true. I hear that the trend line is up and that the last month they met 90% of the standards. I'm just using words.
Our
I don't know what that is.
Our
What?
contract.
They met our contract standards.
Yeah. If that trend line is up and it was continuing to go up, and I'm thinking about paying more taxes, maybe I'm saying, well, you know, can we hold them to a higher standard? Can we check back in 6 months to a year and see if they get that, if they reach that? If not, I don't know what my answer is to what problem are we solving with this addition to my taxes. That's why that aspirational piece for me is we are becoming, you know, the kind of emergency service provider that everybody wants to be. You know, make it an aspirational thing. We're gonna have the people. We're gonna have the vehicles. We're gonna have the stations. Let's be proud as Traverse City. That seems like an easier sell than what's wrong with it.
I just wanted to say something a little bit with ad hoc information that I think we briefly touched on last week, or last meeting. Yeah, we had a fifth Monday, sorry. But one of the things we did talk about is the response time numbers you're getting are for priority 1. So if your kid is laying on the ground with a broken leg, that's not a priority 1 call. We don't have data and they don't collect it on that response time. I will not say that I question the competency of MMR. They're staffed at what they're staffed at. I think that is where I would come back to, yeah, and short-staffed. And that is where I would come back to, you know, at the end of the day, somebody has to vote how they have to vote, but our guys are showing up to those calls just as quickly as they're showing up to priority 1s. And I think that is why we've seen the trend move the way it is. Again, I think we've seen the trends. I think we see how some of this goes, but at the end of the day, this is one thing that voters have in their hands to decide.
For clarity, one thing, that is the same standard for priority 1 calls as what Munson Northlight had, It's the same standard that we have put together for MMR. So the standard's been the same for this community for a number of years. So it's not like, well, that's all we do. Well, that's all we ask for.
And that's fair. The question that was asked, though, was what are we selling here? And I'm saying we're selling a stem to stern. And that may not be what people want. That might not be enough for somebody to want to do it. But that's part of what we're talking about here, that we differentiated during the ad hoc discussions.
Yeah, so I haven't interacted with any of this personally, but did talk to people who said when the fire department arrives, they are so wonderful and well-trained, as we know, and they feel like a little let down when that next transfer happens. And that's just anecdotal evidence. I have nothing to support that with, but
Well, let's clarify, yes, Mark, please.
Well, I was just going to add my 2 cents, but I do stand with the firefighters, and I'm a big fan of bringing this in-house, and I'm also an even bigger fan of the bill being reduced for in-city taxpayers for what they're getting for their extra $10, $15 a month, depending on their tax bill. And I think Mayor Pro Tem Shamro articulated it better than me a little while ago, but I'm reluctant to take like all the words that, you know, when physicians say that the patient outcomes aren't any different. I kind of trust the people, the first responders, to be able to make that call a little better. Earlier on the consent calendar, we talked about the opioid litigation, and you know, I refuse to believe that that just came from Walgreens and other pharmacies, and that it wasn't somebody writing those scripts. So like, it's not always, you know, the best judgment of patient outcomes. Glitch.
We need to get down to the actual motion or whatever. I've got a question on the resolution and what the ballot language will be. It has in here that you corrected in here that someone put up to 1 mil. So what does that mean? That they could, but we're saying you could get a full mil.
Yes.
Or we may not need a full mil for that particular year. Okay. So the other question is, how many years do you want this to go for?
I'll just go ahead and make the motion that the City of Traverse City resolution to adopt a partial Headley override millage proposal be adopted, with the mill to be levied for a period of 20 years, which schedules the ballot proposal for the November 7, 2023 election be adopted.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, we have support. All right. I'm going to stop here. Anyone else up here have any questions? I'm going to open for public comment.
I do have one question. The 20 years, does that pertain to anything in particular?
It's 20 years, so 20 years to up to a mil. Some years it might be less, potentially. At that point, it would come back for either a renewal or a reflection that that body that dare to say will not include any of us will decide if it will go back on the ballot.
And that is barring any changes in the process.
Yeah.
In the intervening 20 years.
Mr. Mayor or City Manager?
Hang on a second.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, does the commission want to, given this, do you want to keep the facilities piece separate? I mean, there is the ability to use it on some of those things, but, you know, given some of the concerns.
I don't understand what you're saying here.
Do you there was concerns expressed about not bringing the facilities
Well,
forward.
correct, but you're kind of behind the
Okay.
8 ball now because you got to have this done now.
Yeah.
The wording is pretty clearly for ambulance services.
This is just for the emergency transport services only.
Got it.
I mean, we
There
could
was
change
another
it, but that would
separate
be
millage.
extensive amendments.
There was another separate millage that was put together based upon an estimated cost that was given to us by the consultants being used by the city and county. But here's what it would take. It was a very high number, and that's kind of where we left it. And we said, okay, and we did the numbers and said 1 mil could cover it, and it was the worst case scenario we could come up. Somewhere the decision was made not to bring it up. And this has to be done by this meeting, unless you want to call a special meeting next week to add another millage question. I don't know who left it off, but it was not meant to be left off. But it has been. It's kind of behind the 8 ball now. So That's where we are.
Wait, what got left off?
It got left off. It was meant to be brought up.
What did?
Facilities.
Facilities,
Okay.
the fire
Both
stations.
questions were supposed to be brought forward.
Yep, it got left off.
I thought you said that they couldn't be,
They can't be
They're
on the
two separate-
same
they're two separate
millage.
questions.
they can't be on the same millage, but
They
they
could
could
be
have both
separate
been
questions.
put.
Both questions could have been on there.
I see.
Okay, but it's been done now unless you want to have a special meeting next week and they can add it. So we'll take it from there. All the information's there. I mean,
Yes.
it's the best guess we got right now, and it's, adding one mill would be more than enough probably to cover whatever's going to happen. And it was designed to meet whatever comes for the future. But that's not here right now. That's not what's on our agenda. If they want to add it for next week, I have to leave that to staff. Okay. All right. With that, I'm going to open this for, you had a question, Chief?
Yes, sir. I can provide more information on the projected revenue numbers that the city commission.
You don't have to at this point.
Yes, sir.
You're not going to convince me of any changes, so, if that's what you're trying to do. No. You can, but go ahead. We've got a motion here, so let's move forward. Mr. Ball, go ahead. You're giving public comment at this point.
Okay, I just want to do a point of clarification. I was in the ad hoc as well, and Mr. Mayor, you did know that it was going to be separate. The minutes will reflect that, just so we know.
What?
That was never supposed to be together.
Yes,
Right.
it was supposed to be together. I was in the ad hoc. I happened to chair it, and I happened to write the memo.
Okay, well, we can check in the minutes, okay?
I
just
know
wanna
what
let
I
you know
wrote
it
the
was never-
memo. Mr. Ball, I know what I wrote, and I know what I recommended.
And then other thing, the reason where we came up with that $800,000 figure, I'd just like to clarify that. We now have a year of data transporting. We transport about 5% of our calls right now. So accurately, it's been averaging $498 per call, and that's just from Medicare that we collect. So if we take that and then we use that 1,750 figure, and you times that, that's a figure over 800,000. So that's where we came up with that. And that's not collecting anything other than insurance for resident and non-resident. So,
Pretty good. You didn't give me that number until now. Thank you very
No,
much.
we got
You
it.
didn't. Okay. I'll open this for public comment. You got any others? Go ahead.
We ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you are a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep, and we finally request that all language be respectful to all parties.
Thank you. I'm Ralph Cerny. I live in the city, 707 Monroe. I'm the retired president of Munson Medical Center that wrote a memorandum to each of you expressing the thoughts that I will share again with you and reiterate my concern. Basically, if it ain't broke, why are we fixing it? The question you have to decide on tonight is whether to put this vote to a vote of the public, to see whether the public is willing to underwrite a greater tax bill to take on a service that is currently provided at no cost to the taxpayers. For many decades, Munson provided this service through North Flight EMS, and I believe provided a very fine service. I believe also that MMR is continuing to provide a fine service. I have heard nothing from the fire department or anybody else to say that the current service is a poor service and needs to be replaced. If that is the case, if it's not a poor service, if we have not proved that it's a poor service, why are we putting it before the voters to say we need to replace it with the city fire department at a cost of $1 million? Why are we doing that? Healthcare outcomes are measurable. Munson has been measuring the results of healthcare delivered in its facilities for decades. EMS is measurable. The fire department is putting before you no measurements of healthcare outcomes, none. They are only talking about response times. Response times are relevant in EMS, I will agree, but they are not the sole measure of the effectiveness of an emergency medical system. I think you should turn the fire department around on this and say, bring us better data. prove your case to us before we have to make the decision to put it before the voters. Prove your case by coming to us and telling us that the present system is resulting in poor health outcomes. Commissioner Werner, Commissioner Colbert both touched on these points. They are critical to this decision. It's not an emotional decision to say we want a glitzy, bigger fire department, or the townships are all doing it, we should do it. That's not the issue. You have it provided right now. I believe you have a quality service. It's costing the taxpayers nothing. Why ask the taxpayers to take it on if it's not broken, if the results are currently adequate? I think it's not responsible for you to put it before the voters. You should be telling the fire department, you haven't made the case. Am I done?
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan, resident. So with this this proposal to put on the ballot, I think that, you know, we're a democracy, and if the city residents don't like the proposal, they always can vote no for it. You know, just like how I really didn't like the the tall buildings, you know, proposal that was done several years ago and put in the charter. You know, I had a thing against it. I voted no for it, but it passed, so I have to live with that. That's fine. So apparently if we go ahead and we put this on the ballot and it does, the taxpayers and the voters do approve it, well, then we're going to have to live with it, and that's fine. I have no love for Munson, really, just because whenever I talk to Munson's facilities, I can't get a straight answer from any of them. So, thank you.
I'm Mary Van Valen, 871 Webster Street. So, I love our fire department. I have been so impressed, and I needed them once, and they were awesome. And so if you don't put this on the ballot, how will we support them to get the people they need to do their work the best they can do for all of us? That's my question.
Hi, I'm Jody Mackey. I'm a city resident, 1058 Washington Street. I've got some data for you from my own personal experience here this summer. Being a city resident who has experienced the expertise of the city fire department firsthand, I cannot say enough about the incredible levels of training and professionalism this group enacts during an emergency. My 11-year-old nephew collapsed in my yard on June 30th with an unknown cardiac condition. Fire Station 2 arrived in minutes and began treating Jacob in ways that I only thought were possible in a hospital. The group of men and women involved in this emergency not only saved his life, but ensured he is free of brain trauma because of the fast response time, on-the-scene medical attention, and working in tandem with MMR and police to get him to Munson in incredible time. I know about the proposal being discussed tonight, and I would ask that the city allow voters to weigh in on giving TCFD the additional personnel, first responder equipment, and transport duties so that all city residents can feel secure knowing their loved one gets the top-notch services for their tax dollars. The dual training the Traverse City Fire Department has is invaluable, and I agree that this presentation proposes the way emergency services should be delivered. It seems more efficient and logical to allow Traverse City Fire Department to finish the job they already start by delivering the patients they treat by ambulance. We were fortunate that the additional personnel were on staff the evening that my nephew collapsed because of the Cherry Festival, so there was a ton of extra staff on. We talked about that if that hadn't happened during the festival or during that night preceding the start of the Cherry Festival, that the response times may not have been as good, and that MMR could have been further away. And I could have a different story to tell you. It was literally like all the stars aligning in that the timing, the services they provided, the dual training, everything. It was seriously miraculous. So for me, once you experience what this crew can do, that's the sell. I mean, to be very frank, I want them to have everything they need, and I want them there to save the next Jacob. They also put my fire out in 2018. They did a great job with that, too. But I'm telling you, it's a no-brainer. Give them what they need. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dave Petrov. I'm actually an Interlochen resident, but I live in Traverse almost as much. Somebody threw out a statement here about if it ain't broken, don't fix it, and used Munson as the example. Well, Munson has got a lot of problems. At least they've had them. I don't know where they are today, but I've heard about many of them. And they don't get reported. People don't know about the problems they have. And I've got an experience. I was on 2 different fire departments. I was downstate volunteer, firefighter EMT, and also in Green Lake Township, firefighter EMT, 4 years both places. I also had a little stint where I worked on a private ambulance for three months downstate. And one of the things that I noticed that was radically different between working on a government, as an EMS, I was just EMT, it didn't matter who called, what time of day or night, what the problem was, it was always a priority. We always went there and we did everything that was necessary, from, picking them up to hauling them to the hospital. On a private ambulance, money steps in between doing the best and most that you can do and what the patient's getting. This is a fact. I actually went on one run where it was a simple run, but I was taking a woman from a nursing home to the hospital or whatever else, and it was not a priority run, but her vital signs started to make me nervous. And because it was a private ambulance service, I realized I should have, if it was still government, I would have immediately called ALS. But if we had transferred to ALS, we wouldn't get paid. So there was a little hesitation to do that, and we didn't do it. Everything worked out well. But that was just coincidental. Those are the sort of things that come in between what you're talking about, what you have now, and what's doing. How many people know that it's going to cost a mint to ride in an ambulance versus fire department doesn't give a rat if they ever get paid or not? That's a fact. So they're going to do what they can do best. Whereas a private ambulance service is always going to have the dollars and cents up first. You won't see the outcome because that doesn't get reported. That's the fact that gets left out. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission. Okay, anything else? With that, we have a motion on the table, and we have support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those say opposed say nay.
No.
Nay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Colbert?
Yes.
Pro Tem Shamrow?
Yes.
Mayor?
No. Okay. Next on our agenda, thank you everyone for being here. We have an item, consideration of adopting a resolution supporting the city's participation in the Metropolitan Planning Organization for transportation planning. Mr. Riser?
Yes, this is another one of those items that's been brewing for a little while. There's some complexities to it that I'm not going to pretend to know enough to explain it. So I'm going to ask Tim Lodge, and we also have Rob Carson from Networks Northwest. They're going to kind of tag team on introducing this item so that you know exactly what this change is and how it will impact the city.
Actually, I'm going to introduce Rob Carson because he's the one most familiar on the front lines dealing with all of the entities. This is an opportunity for us to start to receive additional funds for transportation investments, and I'll let Rob kind of follow up with where the process is at.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm happy to be here this evening. Currently, we are in the process of obviously meeting with the local units of government and eligible entities such as the transportation agencies and BETA. We have received approval from each of the jurisdictions which has considered the resolution thus far. That includes Acme Township, Charter Township of East Bay, Blair Township, Green Lake Township, Charter Township of Long Lake, Charter Township of Garfield, Charter Township of Elmwood, Elmwood, Bingham Township, Leelanau County, Leelanau County Road Commission, Grand Traverse County Road Commission, and Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners. Wednesday evening, I will be in Peninsula Township. They will be the last eligible entity considering the resolution. The only entity which is eligible, which has not chosen to have a presentation, gain more information at this time, is Whitewater Township. Although I have been contacted by the chair of their planning commission, I will be presenting information to them in October. And following that, we may hear from them to potentially join at a later date.
Any questions for staff or Mr. Carson?
We really don't have a whole lot of options here, do we?
Not really.
I didn't think so.
We are still actively involved in, if there's questions on this we can talk about, but we're still actively working on bylaws and other processes. But as far as the actual move to an MPO, no, there's not a whole lot of, for us to do here.
All right, I'll entertain a motion, please.
I'll make the motion that the resolution to establish an intermunicipality committee under Michigan Public Act 200 of 1957 for purposes of transportation planning in the Traverse Study area be adopted, and further, that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the Traverse Transportation Coordinating Initiative intergovernmental agreement for participants of the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and further, that the Traverse Transportation Coordinating Initiative, TTCI, bylaws be adopted.
Support. We have a motion to support. I want to thank Mark and Mitch for your participation in the panel and working on this, so it's appreciated. Okay, I'll open it. We have a motion to support. Is there any questions from the council, commission? Okay. Any questions from the public or concerns? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Oh, just so because we got through with a heavy topic earlier, it was a boy.
How many is that now, Mayor?
22.
22.
Wow.
He's keeping our schools open.
I'm helping to keep the teachers crazy. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. All right. Next, we have consideration authorizing the creation and filling of 2 new positions that have been included in the 23-24 budget. So I'll turn this over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As the City Commission may recall, there were a series of positions that were approved in the budget. At least the budget dollars were approved. And it was made clear by the Commission that that doesn't mean that those positions are authorized to be filled. And that was the process, as I understand here, is to bring those back to the City Commission to review. Being an interim, you kind of are in a weird spot sometimes because you look at things a little bit different. So I started looking at each one of those requests from kind of the beginning and these are two of the positions that I am comfortable bringing forward at this time. You know, are there needs? I think we talked about this a little bit at the last study session. Yes, there are needs. What are the right needs at the right time, if I want to continue that theme, I guess. So the two positions that I'm bringing forward tonight, one is the deputy planner position. When I look at whether or not I'm going to add new positions or request them, I'm looking for what needs are being filled. And in particular, how does it relate to the City Commission's goals and objectives and overall operational needs. In working to structure this position, there were two things in particular that I met with our HR director and our planning director to see if this was the right position to work on a couple other areas, or if they would be focusing on them. The first one is the CIP. You may recall in our second of the budget presentations, we talked about all these plans all over the place, and they're not integrated. They're not all integrated into the budget. And Mr. Winter presented kind of a vision of where he'd like to get that CIP. I agree with him 100% on where he would like to get to. This position will play a key role in helping to facilitate that process, which plays into the timing of bringing this to you. To take on a huge undertaking like that, it's going to take time. It's going to take a longer process than what you would typically do a CIP in, capital improvement plan for those watching at home. But it's also going to be a process that's going to take more than 1 year, most likely, given the breadth of what we're talking about here. The other piece of that is on the sustainability side. So there's been a lot of conversation, even in just the short window that I've been here, about our sustainability goals, decarbonization goals. And we have an item later that will address that a little bit further. And you'll see in that resolution, I talk a little bit about climate resiliency and how that relates, things like stormwater and other of the plans that we have sitting on our shelves. Sean and Christine and I all agree that we're not a big fan of plans that just sit. And you need somebody to help work to integrate and implement those plans across the organization. That's where we saw this position would play a key role in that coordination and accountability when it comes to the planning side of things. The second position also plays into a theme that we've discussed here, the HR specialist position that was requested by the Human Resources Department. Again, this was something that was in the budget, but I wanted to ensure that if we brought it forward, again, that it was addressing specific needs. And of note is the need for succession planning. We just got done with a very complicated and emotional discussion about staffing with the fire stations. And we've been using temporary help to help fill those. And that role has proved to be invaluable to try to fill those vacancies. Right now, that temporary position is doing a lot of networking, trying to help get some good applications for finance director. I mean, there's a lot of time that goes into that. There's a lot of human touch to that position. The other piece is just a larger, integrated, and well-constructed succession planning across the organization as a whole, that this role would play a big piece in supporting Christine's efforts to build out a strategy to try to limit the negative impacts when people decide it's time to retire or decide to move on to another position. So with that, this is not to say that these are the only two positions I agree with. It just means these are the only two that I'm comfortable bringing forward at this time. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Winter and Ms. Bosley are also in the audience. If there's specific questions for them, I'd have no problem with you asking them.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Warner.
So just in this short memo, 4 times the words sustainability and resilience or resiliency are used, but never mitigation and never the words climate change. To me, it could really be strengthened if we actually acknowledge climate change, say something about mitigation, because I've been called out for demonstrating privilege when I shouldn't. To me, this is the height of demonstrating privilege if we say sustainability, that we think we can sustain Traverse City with the status quo, and that we won't try to play our part to fight climate change, but we'll just be resilient and we'll just roll with it. We'll build, higher levees, put our sanitary sewers not quite so deep, et cetera. yeah, we probably will be fine here for a very long time compared to other places in Michigan, other places in the country, and other places in the world. But if we're trying to move things forward, this is going to be a report that's 2 positions below the city manager, so nobody that we as the city commission have any direct say over, and that's fine. But it is an opportunity to at least give a nod, give an indication to this new hire, as well as the planning department and the planning commission, frankly, of where we think we're going, where we'd like to go. And it's also my hope that should we approve this, and I'm willing to approve this as a small step, but I'm hoping a new city manager will want to restructure things in the city or bring somebody on that's a direct report to the city manager that has responsibility for actions. This person I see is responsible for tracking things, recording things, more of a technician level, but who's responsible for motivating us as a city to keep things moving forward? And I'm hoping that could be a direct report to the new city manager. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say that this person would have that role, and ultimately, it's me or my successor is the one who's accountable. This person would have the role of, like we were talking about, implementing the plans that sit on shelves and what have you. This person is on the ground working with our departments on trying to make sure that we're working through those. And this relates to the resolution later on creating metrics that we can actually measure and track, and the responsibility for making progress on that will fall to this position. Now, are they a direct report to the city manager? No, but the planning director is, and so I understand where the concern is at. But if I have clear goals and priorities from the city commission, I have clear metrics that we are on target that we need to meet, and we are demonstrating those and reporting that out to the commission. If the commission is not satisfied that we're making enough progress on that, then that falls on me or my successor, that either there's something being lost in translation or we need to change an approach. So I'm comfortable with this. Yes, could somebody else go a different route? Absolutely. But I think you'll still be able to achieve what you're hoping to achieve there.
Yeah, I would also be cautious about, I know Commissioner Werner likes the stronger language, but sometimes if things change at the state level, would we have to wrestle to remove that verbiage from somebody's job description because we have somebody we have new laws. For example, for a period of time, the EPA couldn't say climate change at all, and states have banned saying diverse and inclusion. So there's certain words maybe we omit them, but we know we can still get the same effect from moving towards that goal.
And I was just going to say, I know sustainability coordinator is a very popular term right now too. So I think it's kind of, if you're searching, as we mentioned, more than I ever thought I would as a city commissioner in the last couple of months, but LinkedIn, things like that, those are headings you might find for the people that you're looking for that we want in these positions. We just went through this whole process of creating our kind of demand, or I guess our must-haves, and I guess, lack of a better term, vibe check for who we potentially are looking for a new city manager. So there were a lot of fluffy phrases in there too of, we live in a outdoor 4-season community and this is what's important to us. So to Tim's point, I think that, there's been enough resolutions with the city commission that we support mitigating climate change and we have green energy goals that, I'd love to see that in whatever gets posted, that's part of what we look for in our jobs. But to Mark's point, renaming the title, I don't know that that's necessary because it is a pretty common vernacular now. But I think that is something we could emphasize a little in the position to really drive it home if possible. But it's under you.
Okay, I'll be glad to entertain a motion if this is what you'd like to proceed with.
I'll move that the city commission authorizes the approval of adding the full-time positions of Deputy Planning Director, Sustainability Coordinator, and the Human Resource Specialist.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion in support. Anyone from the audience who would like to address this or have a question? All right, I'll bring it back to you. Yes.
Is that motion okay? Because that's not the one on the front page. That was the included memo. Is it all the
Do
same?
we prefer generalist or specialist for human resource?
Specialist.
The motion
Specialist?
should say,
Oh,
the
it
city
says
commission
generalist in the
authorizes the
final.
creation and filling of
Yeah.
Deputy Planning Director and Human Resources Generalist.
And it says specialist in the memo.
And we're hearing from Christine off to the
I've got
sideline.
it.
She
It's on
prefers
the cover
specialist.
page of the.
Scroll down, it's at the bottom.
So at the bottom
I got
is
it.
this one.
Yeah, but that's not the one that's in, in the cover memo. That's the motion we always go with.
Christine's off to the side so you couldn't see her, but the one that
Which one
wasn't
do
the
you-
correct
The
one, but she
specialist.
prefers
Okay,
specialist
yeah.
over generalist, so we inadvertently got to the point we probably should have gotten
Okay.
to.
And-
Yes.
All right, that's fine.
That's why I asked.
Thank you.
Good point.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right, we have a consideration of approving the pay structure for employees of administrative, confidential, and technical ACT employee group. And I think you all went through this on the 24th. So any other things you need to bring up?
Yeah, I'll just be brief because there was very strong consensus at the last meeting. The reason we did put this under new business is one thing I would like some direction from the commission on is the effective date, when those changes are. I know that the commission has been asking for this to get done. I didn't know if, typically, if we go through this process, we would just make it effective when we get that done or the next quarter. So say it's October 1st, or do you want it to be retro to July 1? That call needs to be made by the commission because most likely, as we're starting to do some preliminary work, it's going to exceed my spending authority one way or another, and I don't want to set false expectations with the staff.
Okay. It's blank there, so you can fill in the blank.
I'll make a motion that the city commission approves the pay structure for employees of the administrative, confidential, and technical employee group with the effective date to be July 1st, 2023.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion to support. All those, okay, anyone from the audience? I know you're all getting ready for the next one. I know you just want to get to it and have that discussion.
I'm just excited we're taking it to 11.
Huh?
Yeah.
I'm just excited we're turning it up to 11.
Not 11 p.m.
Oh, no.
It's a joke from Spinal
I know.
Tap.
No. Okay, see none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next,
Long overdue.
Yes.
Yes.
building, consideration of request from Commissioner Warner for the City Commission to adopt the building electrification policy. You have a copy of the policy in your packet. I've also have put in front of you a couple of changes I would recommend for consideration. So, that I gave that. And I don't know who out there has read the packet. I'll be glad to read out what changes I have, if you want me to, Tim.
Why don't we wait, if that's okay? I mean, I'll touch on it.
Thank you,
That's okay.
sir.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
doing a presentation, or should we ask for staff or anything, or?
This is his request.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
I'm happy to have anybody
Okay.
speak, but I don't have a
You don't have a
staff
PowerPoint,
member in.
Yeah.
Well, I had a question. I think this would be Frank. I thought I saw him in here earlier.
Yeah, right there.
Sorry, I feel like you guys are like waiting for the spotlight to come on you and don't know when it's coming. But I had a question about 2.3, mostly about the date. Regularly scheduled replacements of city-owned boilers or other heating and hot water supply be fully electric and attain 100% electric renewability, effective 1/1/24, so that would be this January. I think that's a good policy for us to have. I have heard, even in small group discussions with people, through Light and Power, with people who are in favor of heat pumps, that they're not always readily available up here. Do we know if that's going to be a problem if we make it January 1st requirement, are they going to be able to get, are you guys going to be able to get in a replacement if the boiler at the Opera House goes kaput in February?
Can I start while
Readily.
he comes up?
Huh?
Can I start while he comes up?
Yes, you can.
So I'll go through it real quickly then while, and please come up, Frank.
Go ahead, Frank.
So as far as requirements, there are dates in here this time around, and I have had the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Duturi and discuss some of these, and specific to the boilers, the intent is that this is for regularly scheduled replacement. So if something goes out, no, we're not currently prepared as a city to get something in quickly and make an emergency repair. But as Mr. Duturi brought up in our discussion, that would be a great next step in the coming years, is to figure out that plan. So what happens when there is an emergency replacement? How will we address that? But that's not part of this in front of us tonight. But each of these do have dates, and what the mayor has provided as a hard copy here has some possible variations on several of the items and some included verbiage. I'm very much supportive of what he has here and willing to go along with it. The only thing that I would, I guess, make a counter proposal about is for item 2.6, because I understand his concern. I've expressed it in previous meetings on previous topics about deed restrictions in perpetuity. Perpetuity is an awful long time. As humans, we don't tend to grasp it. But I would like it to 2.6 to still apply to properties sold, but with a sunset of the year 2040, so that it's just getting things shifted over to electrification between now and 2040, because who knows what the world brings after 2040. But everything else that he's proposed here, I'm willing to accept, happy to accept, not just willing. For the public's knowledge, we had input from 4 developers, I believe it was. We had the Hollander Development Group, who does LIHTC workforce housing, has done work in Traverse City in the past, mostly downstate, is interested in being back up here in support. We had a letter from Innovo, a developer who's done work in Traverse City in support, knows this, thinks this is very feasible. Homestretch wrote a letter in support of both this and our next agenda item, but has actually done full electrification of multifamily up towards Sutton's Bay. And then finally, the WODA Group. They're still a little hesitant, but I've talked to Craig Patterson on many occasions, and they're eager to learn. They're reaching out to various entities. It's just not in their wheelhouse just yet, but they're moving in a very positive direction. So that's what I have as far as introduction. There's dates here. We have input from developers. Sorry to make you wait, Frank.
Sorry?
Sorry to make you wait.
And I'm sorry, Tim, because I kind of mumbled my, did you want to introduce or not before I did, and I kind of unintentionally cut you off, so I apologize. So Frank, I now jumped the line and jumped ahead. So the 2.3, I asked about it if it goes kaput in February, and it does say regularly scheduled replacements, but I guess that's where I'm in favor of this. I'm not against the point. I'm just curious about the date. Does the first of this coming year seem like that's doable for getting boilers and things with, we know we just talked about an ambulance takes 2 years, everything else. Is that looking pretty good for you guys to be able to get that working?
Frank Duturi, Director of Public Services. I think there's some unknowns there that we just can't, we don't know how those schedules work out with the providers of this equipment. But I think, thanks, Commissioner Werner, for explaining the conversation much better than I could have. It was a really good recap on it, and that was the intent moving forward. Is there anything else?
No, I just want to check on the date on that, just because I hear so much about supply chain. If for the next 2 years we're going to have to override everything, I might have put the date out further. But if you think there's some availability out there, or it's not so unknown that you're comfortable with that, then I'm fine with that too. I just wanted to check in.
I think I'm comfortable with what we're seeing here because I really don't have any information or knowledge that leads me to think otherwise.
Okay. Great. Go ahead.
I have a question on 2.6. I'd like to hear your justification for the change you made and Tim's justification for why he wants a different one.
My thing is, if we sell a piece of property, it's not our property anymore. We're selling it to somebody, a third party. It may be a piece of property that we declare surplus, and we don't care what happens to it. I don't believe we should be putting a deed restriction that forces them to do something that they may not want to do. They got to use their own good conscience. Now, if we sell it and they want to come to us for take Lot G. They come to us and we get somebody that we want to develop it and we sell it to them, but they want a pilot, then we've got another thing that goes in here and says, you're going to have to do X. So it's just me. It's called private property rights.
And
I don't want to sell my, I could see me trying to sell my house and say, oh, by the way, when my heater goes out, you got to go ahead and put in a new, heater, that's going to be electric in a deed restriction. I wouldn't do that, so that's where I'm at. That's the only reason I could do. The leased one, I have no problem with. If they decide they are going to build a new building on there, then they got to build it this way. If we own it, i.e. the Opera House, which we lease to somebody else to manage for us, that's our problem. We need to be doing that. Falls up underneath another category, so that's just me. So.
Well, and looking at the last piece of property that the city sold or disposed of, depending on how you want to word it, it was outside the city limits along Cass Road. So, yes, we could have put in a deed restriction, but in that case, it would have made even less sense if we have an undeveloped property several miles outside of the city.
Now, I also am going to say that, if he's willing to accept, I can live with the other one, but you may not be selling, I'll be glad to leave it in, but, but you may not be selling property that way because they may not be willing to live with it. However, one thing that was added to this whole list of stuff that wasn't there 6 months ago is point 3. Everything could be an exception. There you go.
And I'd like to give credit to the executive director of Light and Power for suggesting point 3.
Thanks, Brandy.
And thank you for listening.
And I would just jump in.
No.
She's got a meeting tomorrow night. We didn't want to make her come in tonight, too. I would just say, and I'll leave it to you two to get more into the weeds on it if you want, but I would actually support a little bit more of how Tim has 2.6, because we do exercise that already. We have property we will only get rid of if it's at X percentage of income for rents or things like that. So we already do we don't just sell people property usually and say, here you go, do with it what you will. Usually if we're getting rid of property, we're putting some stipulations on it. Now, we could add obtaining 100% lien renewal for TCLP for properties within the city or for properties within the TCLP service area, because then we're not worrying about like a Cass Road scenario. But I think we've set a precedent of doing a lot of property rights management.
And I'm not worried about that within the service area because like the one on Cass Road, it's not their service area. They couldn't have met this standard, so we can't do it anyway. So I thought about that, and I said, because I was going to do some of that. So wait a minute, if it's inside the TCLP service area, that's our service area. It's not, unless they get some other changes, but this is where we are, and it's got to be provided by TCLC. Not a problem. Yes, sir.
So Linda asked for your call and my response. So here's my response to your call.
Boy, hurry up! I got to go see a grandchild.
If we are still moving toward carbon neutrality, or maybe even carbon zero by mid-century, and it's not just for what the city controls, it's for my house and your house and your house, and we have no say over that. I mean, that could change in 20 years or something from the state or the feds, but currently we have no say over that. We have very little say on very few things, and that's why I tried to capture what we could have a say over, and that's
Yeah.
why I have it in there.
I understand.
Okay, but you did want to get rid of the deed restricted. You wanted to add a year or something?
Oh, so I was thinking all city-owned property sold or leased be deed restricted until the year 2040 to full electrification, and then and everything else can stay in there. But put a 2040 date.
Deed, you want to say deed
So it's not
restricted
in
until
perpetuity.
2040?
Right. Yeah, until 2040,
Yeah,
because it's.
I agree with you.
There we go.
I'll live with it.
This is the sausage
If you
being
can
made.
accept everything else.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cooperation. I love it.
Oh, Nate has his
Makes
hand
the
up.
Darn it.
dream work, we say.
I don't want to hear that.
Nate has
I
his
love
hand up.
arguing with him. Yes, sir.
Can I just ask for a clarification? I mean, most of the concerns that staff has on some of these things are being addressed in this back and forth. Can we just add, I think what the intent here is city buildings and property, is that correct?
Yep.
City-owned buildings and property.
Yeah.
But then city-owned buildings and property that are sold to somebody else.
Correct. Can we just clarify in the purpose that it's buildings/property that that Traverse City owns, or something like that? Because you could take a very broad reading of that sentence and it adds some confusion.
Oh, because we don't say Traverse City, or the city of Traverse City. We
Right,
don't say
because
the
we have
proper
control
name of
over
our
every
entity.
building in this city.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just looking to clarify it to be city-owned.
Okay, that'll be up in the purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, so we're good with,
Well, if you can add that wherever you think you want to add
Yeah,
it, but
just change
that's implied.
City to City of Traverse City.
mm-hmm.
Okay, got it.
I had
Anything else, sir?
No.
I have one more question about 2.5, and I apologize to everybody. I can seem like quite a stickler, but as someone who my first Christmas, week of Christmas meeting, when I was elected, had to come back in for a meeting because we didn't do something right procedurally, I always like to dot my i's and cross my t's. So I'm getting a little picky. So 2.5, the other tax incentives opportunities, that was the line that was added there. Will that help us to kind of include with this, the new pilot policy that we're going to appoint the ad hoc to later and everything? Great. I just want to make sure we're not
Or if we come up with a
getting into a
neighborhood
cycle.
enterprise zone.
Z or whatever else the
Okay.
state.
Good. That's
You
what
know,
I just wanted to
yeah,
clarify, that we
that's
weren't
all
going to
I'm
be
trying do. I
repeating
didn't want to limit
ourselves.
to just, my thought was, I didn't want to limit to just a pilot, because if we did the neighborhood enterprise zone, because I know that's on our list also down the road to see, how can we do something like that? But that's what we're trying to do. So.
That was what I want to clarify. Thanks.
Do we want to make it more broad? I know that tax incentives are the primary tool that we could use, but we could offer other forms of incentives.
I don't know any other type of incentives. I'm sticking
We
with this.
don't really have any other.
If you, I tell you what.
Next year or the year after.
Yeah, then I'll let the next commission worry about that one. I'm just going to stick with what I got right now that I know.
So,
Because there are sorry, to Mitch's point, I think at one of our meetings when the planning commission had asked us about the proposed hotel on the Parkway, and we kind of sent it back. We didn't vote on it, but we sent it back. I thought there was brief discussion about kind of additional height, still below 60 feet, but additional height if you do something.
oh, that's what
So
you,
that's
okay,
sort
that's
of
what you meant by that. Gotcha.
Stormwater
But that,
management.
yeah.
Yes,
But that
gotcha.
can be next year.
Yep.
Year after.
Yep.
Sorry.
How's Sarah doing with our edits over there?
I gotcha.
Those are my only stickler points, so thank you, guys.
Well, the teacher was just asking the.
I'm not
former
sure we have to
teacher.
change that thing. Under requirements, under number 2, it says City of Traverse City Building Electrification Policy requires. If there's a colon there, I'm not sure you have to write City of Traverse City in every single one of those. I think that covers it, but I'm not the lawyer.
He's got a
so-
spot up here that he's going to put it in. I just saw it. It'll work
Okay.
fine.
Um,
But before we sign it, or whoever has to sign it, we'll go back and I'll read it again, and Tim can read it again, make sure we cover it. But we know what your intent is.
Can we have Lauren read it too?
Yeah, it's the sentence.
Could we take maybe,
It's
and I
illegal.
somewhat selfishly asked this, could we take a 5-minute recess while everybody puts the notes together really quick, and I can go get some more
Agreed.
water?
We're good. I mean, if the commission's comfortable, I think we know very clear what the intent is.
All these people are here for that.
And before we have anybody sign it, well, Tim and I can read it one more time,
Okay,
if you're okay with it.
then,
But yeah, if there's gonna be more comments, then yeah,
should I make the motion?
So we're moving?
I'll make the motion that the building electrification policy as amended, or proposed by Tim Werner as amended, be adopted. I don't know, is that what it should be? We didn't really have a sample motion
Yep,
here.
you're good.
Does that work? Okay.
Support.
There was some motion and support. Okay, how many here are just here to say, we support having an electrification policy?
So do we.
Okay,
They
so
wouldn't
do we.
listen.
And if y'all want to get up and spend 3 minutes, and you want, but I'm leaving here at 10 o'clock. And I'll shut everything down. And so if y'all support this, you can see we've just supported it. So either get up and say, I agree, or you disagree, but that's fine. Okay? I'll open it for public comment because we always do. But we're going to adopt this, I think, tonight.
You're still welcome to come up.
You're still welcome to come up, but you all do, And there is another one that's going to be put up here in a few minutes that we hope will also get approved. They're kind of barred together in many ways.
You've already seen my comments on the written record for supporting doing everything we need to do to address what's going on with the environment. And so I won't repeat that, but I just want to share the urgency. NAMIAC has been involved in studying this for probably over 20 years, and we have seen the urgency just grow by leaps and bounds. And right now, most of the scientists of the world agree that we are in really unusual times. They can't predict the weather completely. We can't predict what's going to happen next year completely. And we've seen it in our own state with the farmers, with the lack of rain and needed, and with many other things that are happening with storms that are more severe. So there is an urgency. In fact, they're calling it the climate breakdown right now, that because of this. You're charged with taking care of the health of the people of the city, and that will be part of it. And I want to recommend a book to you that will bring you up to speed in a hurry. It's called The Heat Will Kill You First, and it's a 2023 book. It is right on as far as explaining the history, how we got in the mess that we're in, and then what to do about it. So I encourage you to be informed. Pay attention to not just Michigan weather or climate, but the world, because everything that happens affects us. Everything's connected. The water, the air, everything. And do something to make sure that we are sustainable, have the resilience to take care of ourselves. Thank you.
Christy Minervini, 118 East 17th Street. I'm a board member for Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities and a former city commissioner. I am proud to live in a community that acknowledges that climate change is real and that believes that clean energy helps to mitigate it while protecting the environment and improving the health and safety of our citizens. It's great that we have the opportunity to lead the state with these efforts and that we will likely recruit companies and workers because of it, but I encourage you to pass this policy simply because it's the right thing to do. This initiative was stalled after the resolution passed in 2016, and I'm grateful for Commissioner Werner's persistence and leadership. Thank you, Tim. I hope it will be a unanimous vote this evening, and my only regret is that I couldn't get it done while I was serving alongside you. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to applaud you for the work that you have done to help ensure a safer environment for for our children, grandchildren, and future generations. It saddens me that we are so impacted by climate change now because of the decades of disinformation and propaganda from the fossil fuel industry, as well as the distrust in science. But yeah, you folks. Instead of acknowledging the harmful effects of their products and committing to swift reduction of global warming emissions, many of the world's largest fossil fuel companies have knowingly deceived the public about the climate science and I can't read this. And they are continuing to do that to this day. But tonight, you folks and all of us are making history. And I feel like I'm part of it. And thank you.
Could I have your name, please?
Susan Whedon.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Hans Voss. I'm a city resident, and I'm also the executive director of the Groundwork Center for Resilient Communities here in Traverse City. And thank you. I was sitting there wondering, is this going to pass overwhelmingly? And it appears so. So that's a great move. It's on track with important steps and commitments that have been made and progress in this community by the City Commission, by TCLP. Many of you as individual leaders in this community. The green team is important to this. Our organization, Groundwork, is thrilled to be here and to be a part of this conversation and supportive of your leadership. We have, on behalf of my friend and Groundwork board member, Mary Van Valen, who had to go take care of her dog, she wanted to express her support and also appreciates the collaborative spirit to take on the crisis that we're in. And also want to acknowledge my staff colleagues at Groundwork, Ashley Rudzinski and Liv Rollinger, who've been actively working on supporting this specific policy, which is carefully done. And your consideration of the details is important, and it just appears to me ready to go. And let this be one step forward and many more steps forward in the future, because this community and this issue warrants serious action. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. We have a motion and support. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Thank you.
Whoop, whoop. Thank you,
The
Tim
next-
Werner.
Okay. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. And the next item is going to be a resolution adopting decarbonization and climate resiliency, which is a tie bar to this one. Everything was coming together for this purpose.
That's the number 22.
What's the number count? How many boys, how many girls?
I'm glad you're not a great-grandfather yet. Congratulations.
see things you did. No. I mean, we need
I
to
meant just,
separate.
no, those two,
Oh, I'm sorry.
because they
Separate
chat.
them into the seats.
All right.
Yeah. More to the chatter.
Okay, our next item on the, well, where did Mark go?
He's right there.
Okay.
He's working on it.
He's working the room.
He's working.
Hey, Mark. You know, that's what he does.
Yeah. Okay, he's getting a seat here. Our next item is a consideration of adopting a resolution towards decarbonization and climate resiliency. The Green Team has been working on this at the same time that Tim has been patiently waiting for the electric policy. When this came up 6 months ago, we asked for everything to be put together. I want to thank Sarna for her lead on this and Nate for helping to get this finished, and all members of the Green Team. For me, it's cold tied to the carbon question, decarbonization and climate resiliency to work on it. It reinforces our commitment that was made in 2016. And so with that, I want to thank everyone for their efforts. And also, I would not be doing my thoughts if I also need to say thank you to Light Power, because they brought their portion of all this together. I know there's still work to be done on it, but all of this is coming to get together as a collective whole for what we want to do. So the many parts are coming together to make one great effort moving forward. So I want to appreciate and thank everyone for their efforts on that. With that, I'll turn this over to Nate if he's got any other further comments, but hopefully we can go ahead and adopt this resolution too.
Yes, I'll just be brief for the sake of time.
Thank you very much for your comments. No.
All right, what else to add? So I definitely appreciate the work of the Green Team to help inform this. It does look a little different than kind of where we last talked, but that's the benefit of having an advisory group to help inform the broader topic, and then also my task to kind of develop a resolution that's clear and concise and has actions in there that we can measure. That being said, what I've tried to do is not only be true to kind of what was done with 2016 to recognize the climate emergency, as the Commission has used often, climate change, as I've tried to keep that in there, but I've tried to build in climate resiliency into this and create some alignment with TCLP's efforts. A lot of their discussion has been on decarbonization, so I'm trying to bring in an alignment between our efforts with the utility, or our electric utility. That being said, we also recognize, I think, where this community may be heading to be a larger beyond city operations focus of decarbonization and climate change or climate resiliency. So I wanted to make sure that we recognize that if that's essentially where we're going, that's an all hands on deck. So I wanted to make sure that we are promoting collaboration amongst all the utilities that do work and serve customers here in the city of Traverse City. Lastly, I just want to walk through what this calls for as far as action on the side of the administration, so under the city manager, but also what it is calling for the city commission to act upon as well. I did use the date of June 30, 2025 to try to, again, just pick one date that seemed to be something that is achievable. And so that being said, if this is enacted tonight, there are 4 actions that need to occur before June 30, 2025. The first and foremost is, where is it? That we are going to update our operational carbon emissions inventory. We believe that we're going to be able to get much of this information from Traverse City Light and Power's baseline that they're going to be working on. I believe they just got a grant to update that for the community as a whole. In talking with the executive director, we believe we're going to be able to pull out city operations from that. If not, it might be, maybe we partner with them to get that from them. But in order to really track and create metrics, we need to know where we're at right now so that we can measure that. The second item is that also by June 30, 2025, we're going to create a set of metrics, and we're going to have, dashboard gets overly used, but if we're truly going to be committed to this, then we need to be transparent about it and be able to be held accountable about that. And that's where the metrics and a dashboard or something like that to communicate not only to the city commission, but to the city as a whole of how we're tracking on that goal to be carbon neutral by mid-century, which mid-century is 2050 in my mind. From there, we shift to the city commission, that by June 30, 2025, through your budget policy, that the commission is going to adopt some sort of guiding principles or a measurement or something that gives staff some guidance on, well, what is the acceptable premium to pursue some of these things? Because all these things do cost money. Whether we like it or not, they cost money. And the more a project costs, there might be a return on investment down the road, but that is going to impact our ability to do other projects elsewhere. And again, this just kind of continues on the theme of alignment and being strategic about where we're investing. The other piece of this, if we're truly going to be committed to this, we need to budget for it. We need to have the staff that's going to be able to continue to push this forward. If we're going to budget for things that work towards climate resiliency or to decarbonization, whether it's electric building policies or green streets or non-motorized transportation or whatever it happens to be, we need to make sure that we are committing resources to that so that, when my staff comes to you with a project, we're all on the same page as far as how that's being funded and the impacts of pros and cons of moving forward with something. And then that's also making sure that we have the professional development and other resources to be successful. We don't want to set goals and targets and metrics if we're not going to set ourselves up for success. So with that, I would be happy to answer any additional questions.
Okay. With that, you got a
Wait,
question?
I have one naive question. Does this mark the end of the green team?
No.
No, this is just.
Are you kidding me?
This beginning. Okay,
I got more work to do than I ever thought there was.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, yes.
No, I'd like to support this. I wouldn't even say I'd like to be able to support. I'd like to support this, but what is it? And I've done this not just with this because it comes from the Green Team, but since I started, I've always been hesitant to adopt resolutions. Like we did the water is a human right, and I spoke to, okay, so what are we going to do about this in the coming year? And the year has come and gone, and we've done nothing. Because we pass resolutions, but then, like studies, they sit on a shelf. And I guess one of my main concerns is to me, this doesn't convey any urgency. It doesn't have words in it that could be included with the tweak here or there that helps convey the urgency of the climate crisis. And so, say we adopt, I'm sure it'll be adopted. We'll adopt this, and then 3 years from now, 4 years from now, none of us are up here, or one or two of us are up here, but not me. And that commission at that time is like, yeah, there was that resolution in 2023. Yeah, well, either good for us, we don't need to do anything else, or what the heck did it mean? Like, so where's it? Could we inject and I know you spoke earlier, like, yeah, I want to use too strong a word sometimes, but this is just our resolution for us. Could we include something that conveys some urgency? Like, I just feel like it's, yeah, we're going to keep doing some stuff, and in 2025, we'll start measuring some stuff, and then, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I just feels awful squishy.
Well, I actually don't oppose putting some stronger language in the resolution, but one of the positives that I've seen in the past in other roles in having a resolution already in place is when opportunities come up.
True.
And then we're not struggling to put something together and we miss out.
Well, in fact, one of those opportunities just came that we took a vote on an electric policy that talked about it, something that was probably pretty squishy back in 2016 if someone were sitting around looking at it. And this I don't see this as being any less squishy, but it talks about we have to be doing something. We have to do this. And if it had been for the 2016 resolution, I don't know if we would have done anything else. So I would say that you have it in there, and we have to act on a little bit of faith that this is serious, and we know it's serious. And the bodies that are coming in here and those that are running for office need to know that this is serious and to hold this standard up. We don't have to have it, we know it is, or else we wouldn't be doing it.
Can I make one,
What?
just- not
Okay.
to wordsmith it, but one
Okay.
word request in the first, sorry, there's a therefore be it resolved, then there's a therefore, first paragraph, second page.
Yeah.
Final sentence of that, to support decarbonization and climate resiliency efforts throughout the community and region. Could somehow we include climate mitigation and resiliency?
Yeah.
Got it.
That's fair.
Okay. Thank you.
And one thing I was just going to say that I didn't say because
Say it
the-
again, climate?
Mitigation and resiliency.
Sure.
Because again, it's that trying to fight it as well as adapt to it.
One
was
thing I
hard.
didn't say when we were discussing the new positions, but I think you're making the point here, Tim, is we've made all, we talked about all the studies we've done, but the resolutions we've done too. And we look at, say, planning, and we've had one person who's the planner working on this. So we have a lot of, and then we're always putting them in charge of a new project or a new study or a new resolution. Now we've done a lot tonight. And one of the things we've done is given another person to help to make these things happen. So I agree with what Mark said, that this is now if we pass this now binds future commissions, just like in 2016. And, yeah, sure, somebody could go ahead and redo this. I seriously would doubt that would happen. But it's also out there for staff to see. It's something we're supporting with staff and not just saying, we put it out there, go magically make this happen. And I actually think, I know that the wording isn't urgent, but I think actually putting those benchmarks out there for the last few years, and I think you've kind of struggled this in your way, obviously, by coming up with your own electrification policy and things. I think this starts to create a roadmap too, instead of saying, well, there's our destination over there, but in between is dense forest, unpassable mountains, and everything in between, figure out how to get there. We're kind of cutting a little bit of a footpath that hopefully people can keep expanding on and helping us to do this, because I do appreciate that there are some more goals in there, but I think to your point, Tim, there's goals and things in here, but we can always do better in between as well.
Well,
I
and
like
this-
your metaphor.
And this is also continuation. You may have some more things to add to this next year. But there's 3 of you that are still going to be here until June 30th, 2025. Tim, you happen to be one of them. So push.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
wouldn't call this squishy. This is like a master plan vision, right? And I like Nate's description. The intent of the resolution is to provide specific goals, but leaves the opportunity for the staff team working with City Commission to identify, ways to move forward. You don't want to prescribe too much in this master plan kind of document, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm satisfied.
All right.
Do we have a motion?
I'd like to recommend that the City of Traverse City resolution towards decarbonization and climate resiliency be adopted
I'll second.
as
As
amended.
Yep.
Is amended.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anyone else from the audience have any comments? Seeing none.
Hello, my name is Blaze Mazrant. I'm not a Traverse City resident. I live on 1342 Inwood North, Interlochen. I don't know if you need that if I'm not a resident, but first of all, thank you all. I'm very glad of what was passed earlier. I think this also is great. Something I just want to add, I don't know how relevant it is or if it'd be something that'd be worked into this or just come later, is that, there's so many different interconnected issues with climate change and so many different things that can be done. And I think a lot of people care about this. A lot of citizens, a lot of different institutions and different organizations and businesses in our area want to be making changes and being able to learn from what's going on. Like we've talked about with there's integration between what TC Latent Power is doing. There's cooperation between these different parts, right? So for that to keep moving, I just think that as much transparency and openness that can exist and engagement, like invited from the community, would be great. Like with the, I think with the green team, from my experience, it's been difficult to like get information about, you know, when are their meetings, are they available to the public, like are there minutes, or like to know, you know, what's really going on and what's the city doing in terms of its sustainability and those kinds of practices. So that's just one thing that I would encourage for, you know, engagement and buy-in with the public moving forward. I think maybe some improvements in that transparency could be helpful. So again, thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
We need a
I'm
box.
peeking around here.
Could you put the screen down for her so she doesn't have to look? Thank you.
I could have done that. I just
No,
didn't
you were
know
probably
I
afraid
was
that you
enabled to.
might need- I'd
June
break it.
3rd, 520 Highland Park Drive, taxpayer since '81, on a great old house. But anyway, the thing that I want to underline that Blaze just said, please, in this dashboard, be very transparent. Since 2016, it's been very hard to know whether the city is doing anything. I'm so proud of what TC Light and Power has done, and they've done it very openly. So please, be more transparent.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make just one quick comment?
Mm-hmm.
So just to the comments that were brought up, I do envision, it'll probably be beyond my time, but I do envision, you know, this taking another step further. I would agree that there is an external step that should be taken. In talking with the TCLP executive director, we both said, you know, let's hold off for a minute, because with the decarbonization strategy that TCLP is looking to implement, we thought, you know, maybe where this needs to go is a joint effort between the utility and the city. So if there's going to be an external facing group, let's do it together, but let's see how that kind of all comes together before we go that far. So that's, I see that happening.
Okay.
Sarna Salzman, 535 Woodland Drive. I agree that the transparency is, I mean, it's been frustrating, and I've been hearing you guys. And I just want you to know, like, Colleen's position and the update to the website, I think there's a whole page now that's for green initiatives from the city. The minutes have always been part of the packets of the city commission, but now I think they're going to be available separately. So as the green team evolves and its traditions continue, having the communications person, having a dedicated staff person who's focused on sustainability efforts, all that stuff will help elevate the city's capacity to be transparent, which has been as much of the frustration as, I mean, it's not willful obfuscation at all.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay.
So I just, I think things can keep improving, and yeah, let's keep pushing. I'm all for that.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion to support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Both of them have. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Next is more of an introduction. We'll get more into it. When this was brought up, I've had a habit that since I've been mayor, that anything that's going to be introduced needs to be on the calendar under new business in case somebody has questions. But this is more going to be a housekeeping matter. But this is an introduction to and an amendment to the City Code of Ordinance that deals with fire prevention code and update reference numbers. Some of this is not within our control either. If we're going to have the code, this is the code we got to follow. We need to update it. So I don't know if you want to say anything, or Chief, is there anything you need to add to it, or wait? We'll just deal with this more at our next meeting when we get ready to to adopt it on the 21st. Is that when it's set for?
Oh, this is just for introduction.
Yes.
Yep, just for introduction today.
Introduction only.
I think we're
I
good.
think this is, yeah, it's an amendment for the introduction, and it's being introduced and possible enactment on August the 21st, 2023. Okay. Yes.
I'll make a motion that an amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1610, Fire Prevention Generally, be introduced and scheduled for possible enactment on August 21st, 2023.
Support.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have any questions on this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed say nay. Motion passes. I'm going to skip past the reports and announcements. I'm going to go straight down to a request from Mr. Scott Overholt.
We have the additional item.
Oh, we have one additional item. I'm sorry. We have an
appointments.
additional item that was added to the agenda. You have your packet in front of you. North Union Street Bridge, there was the annual, if you read the cover page, there was the annual inspection of the bridge. They found some spalling that's been taking place around one of the concrete piers and as well as one of the drains. And it was, any last repairs were done in 1999. While the contractor that works on bridges are still in town because they still got to finish up the bridge on the South Union Street Bridge. They've given a price to do the work. We're saying to waive the competitive bid, let them do the work while they're here. The bridge is not going to fall down tomorrow, so that's not to worry, but we need to get it repaired because it's not going to get any better. So I would recommend that the motion that is recommended is that the competitive bidding process be waived and the interim city manager be authorized to issue a purchase order to Grand River Construction in an amount not to exceed $34,787.17. Why don't we just keep it for emergency repair work on the North Union Street Bridge with funds available in the Capital Projects Fund? Anybody have any more questions about it?
So moved.
If this hadn't been today, yesterday, if it had been tomorrow, he would already be doing it, and we have to come back and approve it later. So there you go. Yes.
Just I'm all in support of it. Just a question that the fiberglass downspout that's shown here, is that the type of thing that will be put under there? And if this is repaired and functioning properly, is that just drain straight into the river?
Yep.
So it does. So all that debris in the expansion joint should be in the river?
It is.
Okay.
No.
No?
No.
There is something that,
So the expansion joint's a separate issue, but the scupper drains, the way that they were designed in the 50s, do directly discharge in there. The extension is merely a tool to provide more life on the steel beams that it bypasses as it goes through the deck. It drips onto the steel beams and then corrodes the steel beams.
right, no, I get that. But, so when it's repaired, will the water have any sort of catching debris before it just gets discharged?
No.
No, and that's fine. I
Right,
mean, that's what we've been doing for
what we
decades,
do-
but that lets the public know why we try to address and do better with stormwater.
Right, but we do try to focus on that when we do street cleaning.
Okay.
And then when we go, we'll make application for replacing the deck, and then we will be able to address the direction of the drainage like we have in the
Right,
other
which
bridges.
is why, again, why we invest in treating stormwater. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, anyone have any questions? We did make a motion, right? You made the motion?
Yeah, I made the motion.
Who supported it?
I made a motion.
She made the motion. I supported it.
You supported it, okay. All right, anyone from the audience have okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes, thank you. All right, next I'm going to have Mr.
Are we doing appointments?
Huh?
Are we doing
I'm going
appointments?
to bypass that for a minute. Mr.
Okay.
Overholt has been here for quite some time. He's a Tri-Gas Distributing and reserved public comments. So this is where he's at. And under reserved public comment, you have 15 minutes and it's to make your. Thank you. Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead. Give us your name and, okay, please.
Sorry. My name is Lexi Overholt, and I'm here with my father, Scott. And our family owns Tri-Gas Distributing on Barlow. And we've been servicing the Grand Traverse area since 1947 when my great-grandfather started. And we are here to acknowledge the city's good work on the Traverse City Climate action plan and its goal to reduce emissions down to net zero by 2050. Our only concern is the plan seems to be too resilient on the electrification of everything. Oh, I'm sorry, reliant. I'm nervous. For instance, we wish that the plan would also include EPA-listed alternative clean fuels like propane. The Traverse City Climate Plan says it wants to transition 100 diesel school buses to electric buses. Replacing those diesel buses with electric buses will cost the city around $40 million. If we purchase propane buses, it would only cost around $10 million and still reduce emissions. Our local utility is a good one, but like most utilities, it needs to use a mix of fuels that includes coal and other fossil fuels to generate electricity. And so currently the percentage of renewable electricity generation that we have right now is 16.2%. So that means 100 electric buses being charged in our city would emit 24 additional metric tons per year of greenhouse gases in comparison to propane buses.
Hi, I'm Scott Overholt, and Michigan does have a long history of using propane vehicles. There's over 33,000 of them on Michigan roads. We agree with most of the reasons that are driving the growth of electric vehicles. What is missing is the electric vehicle debate and destructive human environmental costs in the supply chain. They talk about cobalt. Red cobalt. Our local Benzie bus operator is helping us meet Traverse City's climate plan goals. Their fleet of 20 propane-fueled transport vehicles have saved significant taxpayer money because propane fuel is cheaper, engines require less maintenance, and the same power and torque as a diesel engine. They are not the only fleet that runs on propane in Traverse City. Since 2016, the Bay Area Transportation Authority's propane vehicle fleet has reduced NOx by over 90%. NOx is a pollutant given off by their old diesel buses, and it's also a pollutant that comes from electric vehicles being charged by coal plants. Lexi and I want to thank the mayor and our commissioners for letting us present today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have information you want to leave with us?
It's not a requirement, but you're welcome to.
You're welcome to if you have it.
Or can email us after too.
Yeah, that'd be
Hey, why don't you just mail it
We have
afterwards,
notes
then?
on it, so if you want our scratch, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, you can
and
do that. We'll make,
congratulations.
and we'll make sure it's a part of the record, so thank you.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And thank you for your patience. Appreciate it. Okay, now we'll go back up to our appointments. One is consideration of approving the Planning Commission appointment of one member to the Grand Traverse Joint Planning Commission and one of its members to the Board of Zoning Appeals. And that is going to be Anna Derturi is going to be on the Grand Traverse Commons Joint Planning Commission, and Debbie Hershey will serve on the Board of Zoning Appeals. Need a motion?
I'll make the recommendation that Planning Commissioner Anna Derturi be appointed to serve as the Planning Commissioner representative on the Grand Traverse Commons Joint Planning Commission, term to expire May 14th, 2024, seat previously held by Heather Shaw, as recommended by the City Planning Commissioner, and further, that Planning Commissioner Debbie Hershey be appointed to serve as the Planning Commissioner representative to the Board of Zoning Appeals, term to expire June 30th, 2024, seat previously held by David Hassing, as recommended by the City Planning Commission. Support.
Okay. We have a motion and support. Any y'all want to talk out there? Okay, good. I didn't think so. Anyway,
TikTok.
all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay, next is consideration of approving an appointment to the Election Commission, and
Yep.
by an ad hoc committee, and I think Ms. Shamro, you were the chair.
Yep. Ms. DeMerrill ended up being the only one to apply, and Unfortunately, Ms. Stanley couldn't make it, but Mark and I had a lovely chat with her, so I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that Pam DeMerle is appointed to the term expiring December 8th, 2025, on the Election Commission seat previously held by Pam DeMerle, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Pro Tem Amy Shamrow, Commissioner Wilson, and Commissioner Stanley.
Do I get credit even though I wasn't there?
Yes, of
Oh,
course.
Okay, cool.
Support.
There's support. All those in favor of the motion and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next is that we're ready to go to work on a pilot ordinance. It's ready to go. By the luck of the draw, it looks like they have Commissioners Tim Warner, Linda Colburn, and myself to be appointed to that, with Commissioner Colbert to serve as chair. And Commissioner Treadwell is not going to be the secretary. Mr. Warner's going to be the secretary.
I'll be secretary.
On the committee, which will expire on February 7th, 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Okay. Who supports that?
I'll support that.
Yeah, good, because you better, because or else you may get appointed. Anyway, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The three of you, if you will hold up, for the other two, if you'll hold up, we'll try to get our first meeting in next Monday morning before Tim takes off so we can get something moving. So, okay? We'll try to do that real quick. Next is consideration of approving the mayor's appointment of the city manager or city manager designee to the Grand Traverse County Board of Public Works. You know, a couple of years ago, or some years ago, it was recommended that instead of having one of us sit on the Board of Public Works, it's better that the city manager be able to sit on that board. Or it could be another member that regularly has to work in conjunction with that board on a daily basis. I really prefer to see that the city manager continue that because of the relationship that goes with the township supervisor. But I can also see the utility director serving on there as an alternate if for some reason they can't do that. So we're just going to leave that way and let the next city manager figure out how they want to do that. So, yes.
I support this, but what does our city attorney think of, because if it's a mayoral appointment, you're the mayor now and you can do this.
Yeah.
But the next mayor, if they're like, no, I want to do it, and it's a mayoral, you can't speak for future mayors, can you? Is that?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
So the word perpetuity
it's not-
doesn't necessarily have bearing.
Maybe perpetuity.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that
That's
word in
okay.
there.
That's why I was asking.
No, just take out the word input, just take that out, don't say it.
Okay.
I don't do impetu, I don't know who put that in there, I didn't. So anyway, okay. But it's still better that the mayor could serve, but it's still better that when they're doing utilities, it's the most boring 2 hours, anyway.
Or the mayor could designate
And
somebody
this-
If you're not
well-
engaged in the utilities.
And this would this then at least force the hand of the mayor to have to bring it before the commission to change it too, or is it just automatically expire?
I have no
They're
idea.
3-year terms.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do that then.
It'll come back anyway.
Yeah.
One day less than forever.
Yeah, you're officially appointed, by the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners, but we get to submit
The
the
name.
appointee. Okay.
I'll make a motion that the mayor's appointment of city manager or city manager designee to the Grand Traverse County Department of Public Works Board be approved with confirmation by the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners.
That's a motion?
Support.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. We're getting running down to 2 here. Okay, we've already had reserved public comment. I'm opening this up for general public comment.
Justin Reed, 6'3", Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B, Traverse City, Michigan, city resident. I was in this city commission meeting a couple weeks ago, and one thought that was talked about was the intersection of M72 and M22. And it was said about the Jake brakes, about the engine brakes on the trucks that come down the hill right there. That's a noise issue. Well, if it's such a noise issue, then either the planning commission needs to look into other cities that have an ordinance of this caliber, or headphones, or not buying property right next to a state highway. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Next, we have anything that mayor or the city commissioners want to, if you want to see pictures of the new baby, you can. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to acknowledge that this is National Health Center Week.
Okay.
So this week we are across the country celebrating the work of community health centers to provide access to high quality health care regardless of a person's ability to pay or their health insurance status. And so my employer, Traverse Health Clinic, is hosting a hygiene supply drive this week. So if you want to help support the health and wellness of our community, we are accepting unopened, unused personal hygiene products throughout this week to help and then distribute to our community members in need.
Thank you.
Lovely.
Okay. I'll drop something off.
And I'd love to see your babies.
Okay. All right. All right. Anybody else?
I just want to see the grandbaby.
All right. With that, this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Richard,
Yes.
applause to Richard, because it's not even 10 o'clock yet.
I was scrapping in, I thought.
I know. So I got a text from somebody, they're like, so 4-hour meeting tonight? I'm like, not with Richard.